Okay, it looks like we're online and recording. What I really do is teach yoga of subtle energy. Your experience is something. What is it? What's your experience? We're used to fixating on the circumstances and entities and objects and so on that we seem to perceive within our experience, but we're generally not very used to looking at experience itself. What is experience? Experience is a substance. What is present as your experience? Right now your field of vision is present. What is it? What is it that's present?
Recognition.
No. This is not a naming. You can't name what it is, but what is it? You can feel it. You are feeling it. You can feel your experience the way you can feel the temperature of bath water by putting your hand into it. You can then apply all sorts of words and names to it, but the words and names are not the same as the feeling. The words and names don't feel like what the water feels like. And by simply feeling the water, you have a very direct, profound engagement with what it is. So the yoga of subtle energy consists of feeling your experience. Not in terms of experience itself, what is this field that is present? First of all, let's try the experiment. Notice that there's nothing but your experience. Your experience is like a bubble that you alone inhabit. You alone are seeing it. And it appears as your field of vision. It appears as your field of hearing. It appears as your field of physical sensation. It appears as taste and smell. It appears as thought. It may appear as various other arbitrary categorizations of subtle subjective phenomena, so on and so forth. But this bubble is here right now, isn't it? It's present. This sphere, this bubble of your experience is present. It is something. It is a substance. It is a quality. You can and do feel it very directly every instant. You cannot describe accurately what it is, but you don't need to describe it because you are engaged with it directly by feeling it. So, simply feeling your experience, feeling the substance of experience itself, regardless of the things and conditions and so on that you're used to qualifying it into, just let all that be. That comes with, but that is not what it seems to be. You may seem to think you're seeing a room or seeing people or seeing, computers, seeing all these things that you can classify, but all you're really seeing is vision. And all these classifications are abstract descriptions within this field of vision. It's like if you're watching TV and you could say, oh, I see on the TV screen there's a room and there's two people and they're talking and there's a car driving. There's no car, there's no people, there's no room, it's a TV. All you're seeing is light. Likewise, right now, right here, all you're seeing is vision itself. What is it you're seeing? What is this vision you're seeing? Regardless of the things, regardless of the things you could designate appearing within it, the circumstances and objects. What is vision itself? Feel it. You are feeling it already. You are, by seeing it, you see by feeling. See is a euphemism for feeling light. You are feeling light directly with your consciousness. What is it you're feeling? What does that feel like? You are feeling sound with your consciousness. What is it that you're feeling? What is feeling sensation. What is it you're feeling? You're feeling thought. What is it you're feeling? What's thought? Thought is a presence. You know you're thinking because there's something present in your experience, just like you know you're seeing because there's something present in your experience. What is it that's present in your experience when thought is there? What is it that's present? Feel it. Feel what it feels like. What this is subtle energy. What experience is made of is arbitrarily, we can call it subtle energy. I more technically I call it radiant presence. But that's just as arbitrary a way of naming it, because it's beyond words. It's not a description. It's a thing itself. This is an actuality, right? Your experience is for real. It's present. It's here, right? And this that is present is, let's say, like an energy. And simply feeling this energy directly and presently, feeling this presence, is the very highest spiritual practice. The very highest. It goes directly to realization. It goes directly to liberation. Because the nature of what this energy is intrinsically transcendent. It's infinite. And simply feeling it, it shows you that. It teaches you that. By being with it directly, it teaches you the way in which it is subtle, the way in which it is open-ended, the way in which it is infinitely multi-dimensional. It is unlimited, it is non-linear. And you get this very directly simply by this most intimate engagement of experience. Just feeling this field of your experience that is present. It's something, you can feel it. You are feeling it, you have always felt it. But we usually, or many of us are often distracted by our classifications and qualifications and our narrations of this is happening and that's happening and I have to do this and I don't want that. But all of that classification distracts us from what is actually present, this field, this subtle texture, this subtle textural presence of experience itself, which is a thing. It's the only thing. Experience is the only thing that's here. It's the only actuality. It's completely actual. It's absolutely actual. You know, if someone told you your experience wasn't actual, you'd laugh in their face. It's compared to what, you know? It's ridiculous. Of course experience is actual. In fact, it's the only actuality you can find. Try and find something that's actual besides your experience. Where are you going to look for it? Because this is actual, it's powerful. Because it is actual, it is efficacious. It's not a fantasy. It's not just pretending. It is for real. This energy is actually present. You are actually engaged with it. And simply noticing that fact will take you by the most direct path possible for your karma to realization, to liberation. Just by feeling what this really is. And it will very rapidly reveal itself as being completely and vastly beyond anything you've ever thought of this. It will very rapidly reveal itself as being entirely beyond the wildest human flights of fantasy or philosophy or sci-fi or speculation. What this is intrinsically miraculous, infinite, astounding, inconceivable. It actually is that. And by feeling this directly, it shows you that. It shows you what it is. It shows you how it is. You won't ever be able to say it because it doesn't translate into the paltry means of expression of human language. But you can know it most intimately. You can know it most directly. And as it shows you what it is, it will show you that you are it It is you. It is all there is, and it is intrinsically transcendental, entirely transcendental. It literally actually is, not transcendental as some kind of a poetic metaphor, but it is limitless, it is infinite, it is based in nothing but itself. It bootstraps itself out of nothing. How weird is that? It's not sitting on anything. What's your experience sitting on right now? Here's the field of your experience. It's right here, right? What's it sitting on? What's holding it up? It's just here. It's just here. It's like a star. It's just floating in space. It's just here. You know, where's it coming from? Where's it go to? Where's this amazingly detailed, incredibly characteristic rich field of subtle energies that presents constantly as your experience? Where's it come from? Where's it come to? Where's it shining from? How does it work? Just by feeling it, you can discover all of these things. Not in a way that, again, makes any sense, or that you can describe, or that is, analyzable at all conceptually, because it's not like that. But you can know it because you have its facility. You are also infinite. You are also non-linear. You are also beyond cause and effect. You are also indescribable. You're beyond description. So what you are is up to the task of meeting what this is as it actually is. And so you can know this most profoundly. And that knowledge is what is generally called realization or awakening or enlightenment or what have you in various spiritual circles among people who aren't. People who are don't call it anything. They just call it, oh, nice day. And so this is the spiritual practice. This is the highest practice. Just feel your experience. And you will find yourself drifting off into abstraction. Don't worry about it. Just let go, drift off into abstraction. But sooner or later, just come back and feel your experience. Gently, playfully. Don't be a taskmaster or a Nazi about it. Just be loose with it. Just let go and feel this flow. And then you'll drift off into abstraction. All of a sudden you're off and running. Don't worry about it. Just let go. Be very loose with it. But then come back to it sooner or later. Maybe in a second or a minute or an hour or a day or a week or a month or 20 years. But sooner or later you'll just come back to just, oh yeah, and just be feeling this feel. And just sit with that. Just sit with that. Just let go into it. Completely just let go into it. And then, again, you'll probably find yourself drifting off. And that's the cycle. That's what the yoga of radiant presence looks like. And eventually you'll learn that drifting off into abstraction is not a departure from radiant presence. Because, of course, abstraction is presence too. What else could it be? What would it be made of? Where would it be existing? How could it be appearing if it was not this radiance? So as we sit here and talk today and have lunch and do the various things we do, just from time to time, let yourself go to just feeling this field, the actual presence of this field. Just unqualified. It's here. It's actual. Just feel it. And again, you'll drift off, get carried away. Don't worry about it. Let it go. Come back to it. Just keep coming back to it very gently. Keep coming back to it. Keep coming back to it. And that is the shortest path to realization. So during the course of the conversation or whatever we're doing, just sort of have that in the back of your mind. And just sort of move, just stay with this presence every once in a while. Don't get rigid about it. Don't try to cling to it, because that defeats it. That spins you off from it into abstraction. Because there is no rigidity in it. It is not rigid. It is loose. It is creative. It is playful. It is spontaneous. It is mischievous. So when you're like that with it, you're in its mode and it welcomes you. You can sit in it that way. If you try and be stiff or rigid or, no, I have to stay with the presence, you'll just spin off into total insanity. So just sort of keep that in the back of your mind and just come back to that from time to time when it occurs to you. During the course of the conversation, when you're sitting or you find yourself spacing out or whatever, just feel this from time to time. And that is the entirety of the yoga gradient presence. Do not underestimate its profundity. It's a Trojan horse. So, want to have a chat?
A week or so ago, somebody had an experience that I felt was like a game changer. You had said to me, I had commented once about looking over a foggy bay over some white building in Santa Monica, and that going, this is Shiva, and feeling this sort of blissfulness about it. And you commented that, well, everything is Shiva. And so that was kind of the seed, because when I woke up, it was like I saw, it's true, it's all of it, everything. And that, there's sort of the corollary of like, one taste and a liberation from the investment in it formerly. And so it was freeing, and that I on your 7/11/12 tape that I've heard it. It seemed like you were talking about that. There was dialogue about that. Came across some Ken Wilber that I've made copies of. That short chapter seeming to address that. Last night I listened to that tape again, and what occurred to me then was, to look at the Shin Shin Ming beginning in a new light, which is translated basically, the great way is not difficult for those not attached to preference. So again, it's this sameness about it. And Wilbur says things like, and you said something like, one thing that could be said is like, if you're dreaming and then you go lucid, and you're tightrope walking in a dream, and you go lucid, you don't become more timid. You start doing splits on the. So life can be engaged in an even more. Things can be felt even more, because there's no longer fear of death, fear of life.
Yes. And
the one thing that may motivate you is when you see individuals suffering because they believe in the silly dream, that it has reality that it doesn't have, and you have an impetus to want to be helpful.
Sure.
So anyway.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Good. Yeah. This is it. This is it. All of it. There's no meaningful distinctions to be made. This field, this of subtle energy, can be infinitely different than itself in terms of how it presents. It can look like this, it can look like that, it can look like the other. It can look like pleasure, it can look like pain, it can look like light, it can look like darkness, it can look like love, it can look like hate. But it's all the same. It's the same thing, this energy. Shakti or Shiva or Sambhogakaya, or whatever. Different traditions have different names for this, but this is an actuality. This is not a philosophical abstraction. What is here is one thing. Just like when you're dreaming at night, what's there when you're dreaming? It can look like anything. You can be in outer space or underwater or in Australia or bored watching a horrible TV, whatever, right? I mean, it's a dream, right? But what's actually there is always the same. It's just dreaming. Nothing's there but dreaming. The only substance that's there is dreaming. And likewise, it's just one thing here. It's, call it subtle energy, call it, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's actual, it's real. It is itself, it is what it is. And simply noticing that fact is the finish line. Just noticing that fact, acknowledging it as, this is true. This is self-evidently true. That is the spiritual finish line. For real. And again, you can feel it. Just feel it. Just the way you know it is by contact. I mean, allegorically speaking, you feel your experience, and that feeling reveals what it is you feel. You feel green the same way you feel red. You feel light the same way you feel dark. It's here. It's not.
Last Saturday I woke up from one of the longest lucid dreams I'd ever had, and I haven't had much of any in recent times, even remembering fractions of dreams, so it kind of came out of the blue. But what made it so long was I simply accepted it as a dream and sort of like surfed it. And just whatever the dream allowed, I walked into and I experienced. And I think that's what made it go on so long, was just accepting it as, now I fell short of knowing myself as an element of the dream. But the world itself, I could just see each object and look at that strange thing, and it feels like some lesson for becoming present presence.
Yeah. By grabbing it, by holding it to be something, you actually fall into delusion. By letting go, by just letting go. Accepting is too strong a word because that implies a contrivance. Just let go. Go with the flow. And then you are fully engaged with all of it as it is. You don't force it into confusion. You don't force it into interpretations, which is how you go into partiality, how you go into non-lucidity, so to speak. Whereas just it doesn't mean trying to space out or something. I mean, just stay engaged, just hang out, but just like that. Just shrugging is a good. One of my favorite mantras is "fuck it." Yes, shrug and say "fuck it." That conveys the right sentiment of how to be with this. Yeah.
Well, when it doesn't, when propensity to freak out, like get lost in content and freak out that things mean something, especially when it has to do with work, family, security stuff. And I ran into something, it was like a perfect storm of, and it was uncanny. I'm used to coincidences becoming really prevalent when I'm onto something really cool, spiritually. That all of a sudden everything's like, whoa, what, wow. And this happened, the coincidence started happening around something could have blown apart two families. And it was really intense. I really get lost in the meeting, didn't sleep for a couple of days. They're really going, off the deep end type of thing. In the meantime, still, I'm noticing the field. The meanings are just this thought, this one little part of experience. Doesn't matter. They meant something, and they're present. And so it's interesting because I was able to feel it. It's present, and but still, it didn't loosen its hold until I found out that I was misperceptive. There was a complete misperception, and then all of a sudden the floodgates just opened. But you say it's one taste, one feel. I still am really when the rubber meets the road, I am really, really stuck in meanings, conventional content, health of family members,
Sure.
etc. And it's funny. I look at it. I don't think it's ever going to change. I just don't think it ever is. I think I can notice more clearly, and I think almost all the time I'm starting to notice these freakouts are all based on misperception. But I can't do a fucking thing about it.
Well, all grasping, holding, reacting, whatsoever, is based on definition, and all definitions are misperceptions. There is no such thing as an interpretation which is accurate. It doesn't exist. It can't exist. Because conditions are intrinsically nonlinear, infinite, multidimensional, blah, 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 blah. And no description can be artful enough to begin to even scratch the surface of actual phenomena.
Like I said,
In other words, you can never know what's actually going on. So any time you go into anything like that, it's always a reaction to an interpretation, and the interpretation is always a misperception. So that's discoverable if you have the wherewithal to look into it. And also, another trick about the yoga of radiant presence is it doesn't matter. You get carried away by your misperceptions, go into your whole drama queen thing. It doesn't matter in the least. Just go to noticing. When you can, just feel the field, and it will dominate. It will trump. It wins. That's all. It wins. It's like a get out of jail free card. And when you go to it, it will completely, ultimately, let's say, as a process, it will permeate your life, it will permeate your experience, it will permeate your reality, and you will be liberated.
my experience when in the thick of it and still believing the misperception was that noticing all and the things being noticed, the field and other things happening outside of the neurosis drama, that's going on at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit like peeing against the wind. It wasn't very, it didn't, like trump. It didn't trump.
Yeah. Noticing wins. Noticing, there's no contest. As soon as noticing enters the game, it's phew. Yeah. So don't worry about worrying about letting go of attachment and worrying about letting go of interpretation is just giving more self-importance to conditions, and it's self an interpretation. Just let go of it. Fuck it. So you're a drama queen. You like to interpret things. You like to get all torqued up. It's like, okay, hey, who cares? You do noticing, and that's irrelevant as it happens, and ultimately it's irrelevant because it will tend to stop happening in the long run. But even if it continues happening, it doesn't matter, because it itself is radiant presence. It is. What else could it be? How could it be appearing? I mean, that juiciness of your emotions and the intellect of your, intricate interpretations and all of that, and your causal tie-ins and your fantasizing and catastrophizing. I mean, that's a work of genius.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's an exercise of profound transcendental intelligence. It itself is an exercise, is a display of radiant presence. In Buddhism they say the 5 poisons are the 5 wisdoms. This is what they're talking about. The actual substance of delusion is pure transcendental light. It's pure transcendental subtle energy. The actual substance of it. So, you're torqued up and you're misinterpreting and you're in delusion and you're furious and you're panicking and you're having, your heart's palpitating and all that. All of that is a light show of subtle energy. Nothing but. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. And seeing that is the case, seeing the substance of it, you're going to noticing, going to feeling this presence, demonstrates that. It undercuts it. And in the long run, it undermines the tendency to go to that so intensely. Or at all, depending on your particular karma and all that. But it becomes less and less relevant whether or not you do. Because the more certain you are that, like if you compare this freak out to, say, a freak out you might have had 10 years ago, you might notice a slight difference in character in terms of the sort of backlog of noticing that you have accumulated over the last few years and so on.
I actually was better at creating worst case scenarios this time than
See? You're getting more artful in your artful in your paranoid psychosis. But the cardinal rule for noticing, the cardinal rule for this yoga is do not try to correct your errors. Just go to the positivity. Don't try and fix anything. Don't try and fix you're doing it wrong. Don't try and fix your obsessiveness. Don't try and fix your delusion. Just let go. Let go into it when it occurs. Relax. Let go. Non-resistance would be a good way to put it. But just go to the positivity of presence when you have the wherewithal to do so. On the one hand, so you go to the positivity of presence, and number two, don't resist or fight or try and change your delusion, your obsessiveness. And those two things it's a left-right punch. It's a knockout. Because resisting it or trying to fix it, it energizes it. You're giving it importance. You're saying, this matters, I have to fix it. Whereas just letting go into it, saying fuck it. So I'm a crazy man. It's like, what's new? That's always been the case.
It's really interesting because I would get to where I was really looking at it as sort of a phenomenon thing, and it was just kind of locked. It was a stalemate. That's basically what it was, a stalemate.
Sure.
And I knew that. I mean, I know that, but I'm looking at it very experientially, but it's just locked.
Yeah, sure. You're good at it. A lot of practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The intensity of feeling is still there.
Absolutely.
You still feel that jolt, that obsession, that thing.
Sure.
That it's just when you don't, like you say, don't go into analyzing it, finding the solution to it, or what am I doing about it. Just, what helps me is just like, okay, fine, kill me with it.
Yeah.
Fine, I like that.
Sure.
What I am.
Yeah, just let go and don't worry about it. It can be like going to a movie. You can go to some movie and you get your emotions really jerked around, or get scared, or get excited, or get all, romanticized or whatever, and have tears streaming down your face. And it's great fun. It's a movie. So the presence of these emotions is not in itself a problem. The problem is thinking that it's a problem. The only problem is thinking that anything's a problem. Conditions themselves are not a problem. They're just transcendental energy. Everything. Whether it's something we're used to classifying as positive, like meditation or noticing, or some kind of insight, or something we're used to classifying as negative, like our obsessiveness and our reactivity and our emotionality and all that, it's all the same thing. The classification is just a lie. All classifications are wrong. That if there's a law, that's it. All classifications are wrong. There's no such thing as an accurate interpretation. It just doesn't exist. So whatever you think anything is not that. Whatever you're calling anything, it's not that. No matter how elaborate and detailed and precise your interpretation is, it's wrong. And so, so you can't, there's no basis for thinking that anything's a problem, because you're misinterpreting what it is in the first place. If it was what you thought it was, it might be a problem, but it isn't. If our lives were what we've always thought they were, we'd be screwed, wouldn't we? Oh my God, the horror of the human condition if it was actually what what people tell each other that it is. With God, with that, the only reasonable thing to do would be go out and kill yourself. And these people that go into movie theaters and start blowing people away, it almost starts to make sense, you know. If it was actually like that. I mean, thank God it isn't. And because it's not, you can take advantage of it. That's the nice loophole that enables the reality of true spirituality. It's not like that. It's actually something else entirely. And what it happens to be is inestimably cool and inestimably valuable and wonderful. And you have access to it. And that's really powerful. It's just a really powerful fact. It just happens to be like that. You know? No one made it like that. It's just like that. And, you know, hallelujah. It just happens to be the case that everyone's wrong. So what's going on here? You read the newspaper, you read the encyclopedia, you read Wikipedia, it's all wrong. It's all every word of it is completely in error. Nope. Got it wrong, guys. It's not like that, actually. And thank God.
Having fairly recently managed to mostly, maybe completely unwound codependent, used to be very strong codependent ways of being. The living reality was very much, you know, if somebody's in reaction, it's about them. If I'm in reaction, it's about me. And that's very functional.
Mm-hmm.
But what I just saw through now, that's not true either.
No.
It's not, yeah.
It's truer.
Yeah.
But it's not true.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
The actual situation cannot be described. It cannot be held as this or that, no matter how sophisticated and brilliant you are. But it can be known, it can be felt, and that in itself is profoundly and transcendentally empowering.
Interpretations of one thing's very different for me is interpretations of this very immediate environment things. Like when we talk about looking at a wall or something like that. Walls are not walls. And right angles are right angles. Very physical things like that has always become very slippery.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy to notice the interpretation is false directly.
Mm-hmm.
It's with story that is the slippery that it's harder for me to look and it's not me deconstructing the wall. The wall deconstructs itself by just looking closer.
Yeah.
It doesn't carry over to story.
Well, it does ultimately, but you develop facility. You develop. I mean, it's kind of like sensitivity training. You develop a sensitivity to get out of interpretations, and for everyone it's different. For for some people, getting out of interpretation of living in a physical environment is fairly easy, like we're describing, but then the idea of living in a social environment still seems more tenuous and more objectively true.
Yeah.
But for other people, it might be just the opposite. But I mean, that's why noticing is ultimately powerful, because you're developing sensitivity training. Even if you only did noticing on walls, it would still ultimately increase, and your sensitivity would spontaneously develop deeper and deeper and deeper, and it would translate across into more and more of your interpretations in other areas, and all your interpretations are just going to get undermined. Because you just come to see directly the transcendental nature of what's actually here. And of course, that's true about social situations and interpersonal stuff or psychological stuff as it is about sensory stuff. But again, karmically you'll tend to have your own sticking points where it's right, I turned the mic off. Up. There we go. Doing a slight technical adjustment here, if it lets me. I may need to drop offline to do this. Okay, I'm going to drop offline for a second. Okay, there we go. Now we're back online and probably louder. Yeah.
You keep comparing this to a dream.
Uh-huh.
Is it a dream, or is it like a dream?
It's like a dream. A dream isn't a dream either. If you think you know what a dream is, you don't. If you think you know what this is, you don't. But comparing this to a dream is powerful, because we have the experience of being in a dream and having it seemingly be very real, and then waking up and being able to look back on it and see quite clearly the way in which it wasn't. Whereas with the waking state, it's much more difficult to do that, because when you leave the waking state and go into sleep, you don't have the critical facilities to look back on the waking state and see the way in which it just vanished like a dream too. If you did, you would find the same thing. When you go to sleep, the world vanishes. Just like when you wake up, the dream world vanishes. But you're not analytical enough, you're not conscious enough in terms of analytical consciousness to reflect on, to have the wherewithal to reflect on that fact. But it is a fact that it's like that. So that's why the dream analogy is so useful, because we do have that experience, all of us every night, more or less, of being in it, having it seem to be objectively real, and then waking up and having, poof, there's nothing there. You get to really see that, because the objective reality of things, the apparent objective reality of things when you're in them, is difficult to refute. But we all have the experience of dreams, of being in a dream and just thinking it's real. You're there and you're really working and you're giving it your all and you're interacting and you're participating, and then poof, you wake up and it's like, oh, there's nothing there.
Like lucid dreaming, you do remember who you are.
Sure, and then yeah, exactly the same thing. If you lucid dream, the next time you're lucid dreaming, look back on the waking state and see what it looks like from that perspective. But you see, being what I call this yoga of radiant presence, being with this, with the substantial presence of your experience as an energy field, essentially does the same thing. That's a way to become lucid. I mean, in a dream, the same thing. If you're in a dream and instead of attending to the circumstances of the dream, you attend to the dreamingness of a dream, feel the dream, so to speak, you will discover, oh wow, this is a dream. And likewise here, when you feel the texture of what is actually present, you discover the ways in which it's transcendental. I use this word transcendental a lot. Say, this is transcendental. What I mean by that is what it is wholly beyond and outside what we're used to taking it to be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that. I mean, I feel that more and more, which is why I asked the question. It feels more dream-like. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like
Sure.
that's why, like, is it a dream? How is that question?
Yeah.
You know.
But
It
then,
doesn't, not exactly.
yeah, but it's not. It doesn't matter because it's not a dream. But it's not important finding what it is. It's important finding that it's not what you're used to thinking it is, and then let go with what it is, and be with it. Because you're never going to be able to answer the question, "What is this?" Because it has no answer in human terms. But you can participate with what it is very, very deeply and very directly, irrationally. Because you are an irrational being. This is an irrational phenomenon. So you can meet it where it is, even though you won't be able to pull that back into your rational mind and communicate it to people in words or something.
There's something happened. It's quite complicated, and it seems like I was the one who played the marionette show and directing every movement and everybody, because there's so many parties involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I constantly felt like I was the one who has to balance out everything. And things can be getting quite intense, and somebody may lose something, and so on and so forth. During that time, I was quite stressed out. But it also happened is when I really feel this intensity, and one thing happened is I feel the body. I feel all the sensations. When that happened, the thought process kind of just diminish and go into the sensation. And the other thing I find is so fascinating is everything seems so real, the situation is so real. But when I really look into it, it just disappears.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really find that situation.
Yes.
And there are few people involved that I have to deal directly and I felt responsible for. And when I look into it, I can't find anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the storyline and the consequences is so logical. If I don't do this, it will face in this consequence. If I do that, it's going to be like that. But when I look into it, it doesn't really exist.
Right.
It was such impact at each time when I find the non-existent aspect of the thing. And then from there, and I felt like the dream analogy is much more closer to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt, oh my God, I think everything's so real, but it doesn't really exist. The only thing is my habit of grasping the story is so strong, so it always comes back. Whenever the story comes back and I look into it, it doesn't exist. It's kind of a surprise. And then when it dissipates, very quickly it comes back again. Mm-hmm. So it's like constantly, not really even, I can't say battle, because I wasn't really fighting with it. If you fight it,
right,
it only reinforces it.
Yes, exactly.
Right, but it's just the habit is so strong. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going back to the delusional or whatever, and so I remember one time I was complaining that I had some back pain problem, and you were told me that during this process, unfolding process, anything can happen. Like not only the health, but psychological and the synchronicity, the work around me can happen, and they are inherent means for to advance this process. Yes. So if it wasn't because this intensified situation, I won't be able to look into it because everything's so good. I feel good generally of the life and everything. So I'm not really energetically engaging into this looking business. but when things getting so intensified, and the tension drift, turn around and look into it.
Yeah.
So even though the thing was so stressful, but it really worked out in my benefit of seeing through it and see it is dream. It's literally dream that I think the situations and the people and all the consequences and it is made up. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I feel so real.
Sure.
It's constantly two words, fighting against whatever.
Yeah. What we're up against in all this is exactly our habits. We have a tendency to repeat the modes that are familiar to us. And so this yoga is a gradual retraining of your habit. You're trying to plant the seeds of a new habit of noticing direct experience, as opposed to the old habit of going to interpretations and being reactive to them. And it's powerful because, as you say, the interpretations do not stand up to direct observation. Direct observation trumps. It's more powerful because it's actual, it's self-evident, and it reveals the inadequacy of our interpretations. And then, of course, our reactions to those interpretations, it pulls the rug out from under that because you're reacting to a fantasy. So, but there's a habit, so we go back, and that's fine. So, but again, you go back. Just sooner or later, when you have the wherewithal, go back to just being with direct experience, and you'll see, oh yeah, that's right. It's not like that. And then you'll go back, but gradually over a period of time, you're retraining your habits, and you're developing a new habit of being with your experience directly outside of the context of interpretations, outside of the context of holding it to be this, that, or the other. Which, as that habit gets stronger, essentially removes us from the painful world of being a crazy person. The painful world of having unrealistic interpretations and then reacting as if they're true, which is always going to cause suffering. That simple. In reality, in actuality, there's no basis for suffering. And so as you become more and more acclimated to being with your experience as the actuality that it is, there will be no basis for suffering. It doesn't mean a cessation of pain, it doesn't mean a cessation of different kinds of sensations, but there will be no suffering attendant, because suffering comes from interpretation. Suffering comes from thinking, this shouldn't be happening, it should be different than this. Or that it's going to be this and that's going to lead to that and that's going to be horrible. All of these kinds of imaginary exercises which are not actual. They're not actual. And the actuality provides no basis or support for that kind of a mode of relating to it. Because the actuality is always self-sufficient, it's always spontaneous, it's always completely fulfilled, it does itself, and it leaves no residue. So there's no basis for anything to worry about, because it's taking care of everything. The next moment's going to appear, completely. It's doing itself, it doesn't require anything from you. Period. Forever.
I guess I'm not, I can't completely trust the thing yet. I always felt like that my involvement is essential. I have to do certain things.
Well, that's why it's like a training. You develop confidence as you develop more and more experience with noticing. Gradually confidence builds up of, oh yeah, this is real. It's really like this. and as that builds up, the reciprocal, and my interpretations are absurd. They're completely unreal. They're crazy. They're delusional. It becomes more and more obvious, and so the seduction to go back to that becomes less and less powerful because it's laughable. It's like, oh, I was really nuts back then, wasn't I? You look back on that and you think, God, I was a crazy person. Who'd have thought? Isn't it? It's hard to it'll be hard to imagine. You look back and you go, God, I was really like that, wasn't I? What was I thinking?
Too much. So it's safe to say that the idea, which is a pointing towards real. The idea of realization is a habit.
Of course.
It's just a different kind of habit outside the context of interpretation.
Well, it's not outside the context of interpretation, because again, as you say, it itself is an interpretation. But it's an interpretation that if you're approaching it artfully, inclines away from interpretation. So you're using interpretation as it's the old using a thorn to remove the thorn kind of thing. As long as you have the wit to throw them both away when you're done, and not reinsert it. All of these spiritual interpretations are largely misunderstandings, and as such delusional. Ignorance or delusion or non-realization is not what people think it is, and realization is not what people think it is. Realization is the actual condition. Realization is what has always been going on here. And calling it realization is just a technicality of realizing that, coming to realize that fact. But it's not actually a new condition. Nothing is added, nothing is taken away. Nothing is actually any different. It's just stop misinterpreting. Stop believing that it's other than it actually is. And that's the transition from delusion to realization. But it's not, the glorification of realization and enlightenment, putting it in capital letters and putting these people up on mountaintops and all that is absurd. Because it's just not like that. Normalcy is realization for everyone, even for people who are totally deluded. They are in reality. They are reality. They just don't realize it. And you can realize it just by looking, because then you see what this is. You may not recognize it because you look at it and you go, God, this is weird, and then you go back to your interpretations. Because when you first start doing this, what you look at your direct experience outside the context of interpretations, and it looks really weird. It's really, really weird by comparison to the sort of cut and dried world that interpretation seems to supply. There's the world of interpretations, it has plot lines, it has intents, it has goals, it has problems, it has solutions, and all these things are like a game with pieces and rules, and you can relate to it. You look at actuality, and it's like looking at the clouds or something. It's like, what do you do with this? It's too weird. What is it? I can't even think of, what? At first. But if you repeatedly go to it, you begin to get, wow, this is really kind of has some neat stuff about it, and you begin to become acclimatized to it and discover the way in which it has intrinsic meaningfulness and intrinsic potency and so on and so forth, which is wholly different from the implications of our interpretive world, which is a long digression. But essentially, realization is just normalcy, and delusion is just insanity, which exists in the context of normalcy. Actually, you just got it wrong. You're thinking Napoleon. By the way, you're not. Thinking Napoleon doesn't make you Napoleon. So it's just a misinterpretation. So it's a lot simpler and less, in one sense, than most spiritual philosophies put it. But in another sense, the spiritual philosophies have it right, because what reality actually is mind-blowingly astounding, and that's true. But it's not something you achieve or something you get to or some heaven realm that you finally graduate to. It's where you are and have always been. You just haven't had the wherewithal to appreciate that fact. So it's much more of a non-event, even though it is in fact worth it, shall we say?
There's kind of a subtle thing that goes on that I was wondering about, and that is you pull yourself back to noticing your direct experience, and yet what can kind of sneak in through the back door because you're not looking at it is a sense of there's a separate point of consciousness, an I that's observing my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So then you become aware of that. Right. Oh, separate point of I get it now. Well, now you simply move the separate point of I over here, and it's
Right.
observing you doing that as you observe your experience.
Right.
So my question is, do you, Peter, not us, but do you, in your direct experience at this moment, do you have this sense of a separate point of consciousness that's aware of everything? It's simply that you see through it so clearly that it has no hold on you? Or has that barrier dissolved? And is it in a way that's difficult to describe? There's not a separate point of consciousness that's observing the experience, a separate point of consciousness, or that me,
Right.
if you will, is part of the whole experience.
Yeah.
There's no separation between them.
Right. There is no separate point of consciousness. It itself is interpreted into existence. On the other hand, we are so expert at interpreting it, we effortlessly assume it's objectively the case. But we're likewise expert at interpreting all our interpretations, and we generally assume that they're objectively the case. If you told most people, oh, by the way, the objective world isn't really here. There's nothing here but this bubble of your experience. They'd look at you like you're nuts. They would say, no, it's not. It's just full of shit. What a load of crap. Which doesn't make it true or untrue. It just means that they do not believe that, and the separate I exists in a similar category. It seems self-evident, and it seems certain, and it seems obvious because we unconsciously are expert at asserting that it is the case, at which point it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak. In other words, because we believe it, it seems to be so. But again, it doesn't stand up to direct experience, and in the long run, it will erode and dissipate as well. Because in direct experience, when you really go to direct experience, well, let me digress a little bit. There's a learning curve here. Okay. At first, when you start being with this stuff, it tends to come in little flashes. You get wow, and you're able to be with your experience like that. But then very rapidly, these kinds of things like a separate point of view or various contexts come in, seemingly in that context, but they're actually departures from the actuality into interpretation again. Typically unconscious because we don't do these things deliberately, but these are just postures that we are used to assuming are the case, and it becomes self-fulfilling. But again, that instant moment of just being with this, even though it's not very long duration, is sufficient, and eventually the duration of that increases, and eventually it begins to last long enough that you really begin to get a sense of that when you're there is no separate self. But it's not a removal of anything. It's not that there's no perceiver and there's nothing perceived. There's just presence, a field of presence. And that makes no sense. And the fact that it makes no sense gives steam to the interpretation of there's an observer, it's here, somewhere in there, and there's an observer somewhere out there, or whatever. That's logical. Whereas the actuality that there's just an infinite field of presence, all of which is equally present, and there's nothing of seeing it and nothing being seen, it's like, woo, it's gibberish, it's bizarre, it's irrational. It's like, God, I can't wrap my head around that. And that's the point, you can't wrap your head around it. And we're used to being with modes that we can, in one sense or another. So this is why this kind of a re-education or retraining has such a learning curve, because what you're going to is so radically alien to normal modes in some regards, in many regards, I'd say. So at first it just comes in snippets, and then it doesn't, and then instantly, almost virtually instantly, our customary modes assert themselves, and we see it in that context, and so on and so forth. But if we repeat this, eventually we get better at it. And as we get better at it, it has longer duration, it has greater depth, we have a greater presence with it, and more sort of space and time, so to speak, to sort of look around and see what it's like here, and we become acclimatized. And as we become acclimatized, we notice, gosh, this is just here. There's no me here. There's no it. It's not that it's not a me. It's just there's no need to. That designation is just kind of arbitrary. There's just this. and is, there's what I'm used to calling consciousness, but there becomes no evident basis for discriminating that from just this. There's what I used to call objectivity, but there's no experiential basis for discriminating that from just this. But you get this not analytically, but just this becomes self-evident directly. And at that point, that's the point where, your tendency to go to these older modes begins to become less important and less strong. Yeah. What this actually is, it's so weird relatively to what people's conception of things is. It so far does not compute relative to what, the usual range of people's philosophy and people's interpretations, that it's, you really have to have the gumption or the edginess or the perversion to really stick with it enough to get over that hump of, God, this is weird. What am I doing this for? What's on TV? Because at first it's like, God, this is really strange. And most people don't even get that far. That's why there's this plethora of formalized spiritual practices, and most people are very, I'm an advanced meditator. I've been meditating for 15 years. I really have developed a repertoire of techniques, and I'm really very good at it. All of that is just more structure. It's more fantasy. It's more interpretation. And it's entirely unreal in the sense that it's not being with this as it is. Of course, it's entirely real in the sense that it is made of reality, because what else could it be made of? But it's not, but by holding it in those terms, you're holding yourself, if you were doing it that way, you're holding yourself in relating to interpretations, which is diametrically opposed to noticing and appreciating what this actually is, which is so slippery and strange, at least with regard to what we're used to thinking it is. In its own terms, it's not. In its own terms, when you get acclimatized to this, you look back at human interpretation, and that looks really slippery and strange. It's like, God, these people are really fucking nuts. They think all this stuff, and there's just no basis. It's just not like that, even remotely. Bunch of crazy people, But of course, that's what they'll think about you, so it's fair. Turnabout's fair play. We've been at this a little more than an hour. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and take it from there? Just a little quickie, We'll take up lunch in an hour or an hour and a little bit, whatever. So just get up and stretch and get a drink and. We should be good. Voila.
Modern magic.
Sometimes this is really neat. A thought will arise, and it's a thought that's arisen over and over and over for who knows how long. And then there's this laugh that comes in the recognition of the absurdity of it. Who's laughing?
Who's thinking? Who's seeing the thought? Who's anything?
Ladies?
And what does who mean? Who relative to what? For who to be meaningful, there has to be some non-who. There has to be if who just sort of refers to some vague whatever, what do you mean by it? Why even use the word? So if there's a who, you have to say, oh no, by who I mean who, but there's non-who over here, and who is that which is not the non-who?
How about what is that laugh?
Yeah, what is that laugh? It's just this wonderful. It's the joy of the intelligence. This profound intelligence present in all this. The meaningfulness, the structure, the intricacy, the irony. The mischievousness, the playfulness, the creativity. It's evidence of inconceivable intelligence, and that intelligence obviously evinces all emotions, as well as humor, as well as self-mockery, as well as everything. Right? But within, as experience of this progresses, you really get that. Wow, it's all included. It's just this. And so the answer to any question of, well, what's that coming from, or what's that about, or what does that consist of, is always, well, this. And you get that more and more clearly, more and more self-evidently. That all of these designations we're used to doing, where we differentiate this from that with great precision or with a lot of vagueness, which is more often the case, is really kind of arbitrary. We're kind of just making it up. It's like in a dream talking about me and you. So I'm dreaming and we're sitting in the dream and we're talking and I'm over here and you're over there talking and I'm talking about you and talking about me. I wake up, it's like, you weren't there, it was a dream. I wasn't even there, it was a dream. I was dreaming the dream. Just because I saw myself in the dream doesn't mean I was there. Just because I see you doesn't mean you're there. So you're not there, I'm not there, so why bother to classify it as a you and me? And who's knowing that? Well, I don't know, you can't find the dreamer, so who refers to what? The dreamer is just the fact of dreaming. And this, it's like that with this. The fact of this presence is the fact. And all qualities or actions or agencies or what have you ultimately go back to this presence, this actuality.
While we were sitting here and you were talking, I had I guess an experience and an observation that I want to point out to Jacob. There was a moment where you said something and I had this, and I can't define this moment. I can't tell you what happened, but something happened and it arose within me. And then, it was obvious that in noticing it, that something was powerful that was happening. I couldn't really tell you what it was. It didn't resolve into anything. There was no thought around it, but I was noticing this bubbling up or something. And then I noticed that I had an emotional response to what was bubbling up, because I was happy, I was joyful. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I had this experience, and then I just noticed that I had this emotional response, and then I noticed that emotional response is most likely a habitual pattern. Is this emotion to this feeling of whatever this is that's happening to me that is outside of my context of normal thinking? Is my emotional response just a habit now and a conditioned response to feeling something exciting? And then I noticed that I had when I thought that process, then I noticed I had an experience of sadness because, oh my God, that experience of joy didn't mean anything. So my point is that I'm applying that experience of knowing, and what it came down to is this complete. When I'm sitting here, when we're having a break, I'm having this complete insane moment, or sane moment, or whatever you want to call that, where it's like, what the hell does this mean?
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to notice where I'm with that. Like, what is that experience of that feeling? What is it?
Yeah.
And are all these conditioned feelings, all the things that I feel as a result of the processes of noticing, is that all just conditioned? All those emotional, that's all conditioning. All that emotionality that I'm having is no different than the mental emotionality, the mental conditioning that I'm having at any given moment.
Well, yes and no. You don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. First of all, in the initial sort of upwelling, the very nature of this process of this yoga is completely irrational, and it can, it's in a lot of ways it's very accurate to call it a subtle energy yoga, because it's basically you're in a profound sense what you're doing is you're reorienting. Your subtle energy body is reorienting to itself, because in a certain sense, the way that we approach our life is actually a way of holding our subtle energy body. It's not actually conceptual or philosophical or psychological, because all of those are just apologistic philosophical descriptions. What it actually is a way of holding our energy. And as we engage directly with reality, our energy spontaneously reorients itself. It lets go of these relatively contrived, relatively artificial holdings, and this is a direct shifting, which is experienced as these kind of energy moments. They can be all kinds of things. They can be just little nothing moments, or they can feel like major, wow, what happened, all these sorts of, the stories of Kundalini events and all this is essentially talking about the same phenomena. So that's very genuine, and that's what this is all about. Now, emotion, what you might call conditioned or habitual emotional responses, can piggyback on the back of genuine emotion. In other words, there can be an emotion that arises as these energy shifts, because emotion is energy, of course. But then, in the light of that event, there can also be some degree of habitual interpretation, which sort of piggybacks on that. So it's not necessarily an either or of it's all habitual, it's all bullshit, or it's all real. It's like it can be, I mean, with our interpretations, they're always based on reality. The interpretation has to be of something. There has to be some basis for it. So again, it's a matter of, don't discredit or totally invalidate something just because it has aspects of habitual reactivity associated with it, because there's actuality there as well. And in a profound sense, our habitual reactivity is actual. It's just a relatively immature mode of actuality, and what we're doing is retraining ourselves to a more mature mode of actuality. So we're being with the energy more directly rather than being with it more indirectly through the mode of these interpretations and mentality and associated narratives and so on. It's like moving from crawling to walking. It's a different mode of being with your experience. But the old mode doesn't necessarily just completely dissipate or disappear. It's sort of, they coexist for a long time, and maybe indefinitely. But eventually the more mature mode of direct engagement, direct participation becomes more dominant. And the less mature mode of habitual reactivity and so on just sort of goes along as a minor echo kind of thing. But it's not an either or.
Okay. So if I were to continue on the same track, just continuing following those breadcrumbs, continually and then observing into the experience or the direct experience I had from that, of what happened emotionally, and then observing, just keep deepening into the noticing. You're saying then the conditioning of that habit or that more mature way of looking at things will unravel itself. So to speak.
Yeah, but I would suggest do it gently, do it playfully. Don't be too, I mean, just sort of be loose with it, and you can sort of laugh and boy, there I go tripping out on it again, and but then notice what it is you're tripping out on, and that right away puts you back in direct engagement, direct participation.
What it reminded me of is when I was in university and I started exploring and experimenting with drugs. One of the things that world did was knock me out of the experience of conventionality. Because when I was in those altered spaces, I was able to perceive things from a different perspective. And it's not that it's good or bad or wrong or right. It's just all it did was break convention.
Yeah.
And in breaking convention, opened up, I guess, a maturity and observing or noticing reality in a different way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, drug experiences and any kind of extreme or relatively extreme experiences that take you out of your normal mode can be really valuable just for that point of view, that it does, it rubs your nose in the fact that your normal way of seeing things isn't the only way. And so then your horizon is potentially broadened, and if you have edge to you become curious and go, wow, what's up with that? And you begin to look into these things and investigate them. But the mode is always to sort of gently, or let's say, without contrivance, just be with direct presence. And interpretations will inevitably spin off and ceaselessly spin off. And don't worry about that. And again, they'll carry you away, and that'll happen too, and don't worry about that. But just when you have the wherewithal, just let yourself float back to direct engagement. And this becomes more of a habit. It's a sort of a tactile experience of your experiential field, rather than an experience of holding as being this or that. And you'll become more and more comfortable with being with being with it indeterminately. You'll become more and more comfortable with just being in this field of amazing characteristics without necessarily having a handle on what any of it is.
Well, I have to say, the moment where that arising happened and that shift of subtle energy, my different engagement with the energy, or the different holding of the energy, or whatever it happened to be, because I can't really tell you because there's really nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
That was exciting.
Sure. Oh, yeah, totally.
There was the first spontaneous experience was of a joy that came up. It was exciting.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
new, it was fresh. It was,
Yeah.
It was an open engagement with it.
Yeah, yeah.
It felt good.
Yeah, that's the point of this, is that, as your subtle energy structure rearranges itself, there's a profound joy. There's a knowledge that this is good in the most profound sense. It is beautiful. It is true. It is meaningful. It is profound. It's actual. It's uncontrived. It's the real thing. And wow. I mean, there's a major wow factor there. Like, hey, this is way cool. It's like hitting a home run or throwing a basketball casually and have it go right in. It's like, wow, hey, that was neat.
But it still was. I mean, it was It's necessary, or maybe it's not. But for me, it was necessary to just be aware if that was a conditioned experience or
Sure.
not when the arising of it happened.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. It's fine to play with that kind of thing, but don't be too obsessive about sorting it out.
Right.
Because ultimately, the whole thing is inscrutable. Because even habitual reactions, I mean, what is that really?
Yeah.
It's not like you can actually pin that down to make any sense of it. Ultimately, it's all miraculous. I mean, delusion is as miraculous as transcendental realization. It's exactly as miraculous. And you can't make any sense of it. We can sort of provisionally and pragmatically talk about it in various contexts in this sort of approach. But it's not like that's actually true. I mean, it's all just inconceivably weird. And when the thing to really be wary of is when you feel like you might be getting a handle on something. That's a major red flag. It's like you're way off the deep end if you think you know what anything is. If you've sorted something out, it's like if you're looking at it, scratching your head, going, what? That's a pretty good sign. Generally a good symptom.
Well, because there is a big thing that I've been working with constantly, which was similar to what he was talking about, was trying to ascribe meaning to everything.
Mm-hmm.
And even in this process that we're talking about, I can notice that there's a part of me that's trying to ascribe meaning to that emotional response and categorize it in some place.
Sure.
So to give, there's meaning. Okay, there.
Yeah.
So again, that's part of my mind.
Yeah.
Working from the whole context of how to engage with what this is.
Yeah, sure,
right?
totally.
So I mean, I appreciate that. I have to keep being reminded that it doesn't have meaning.
Yeah, and you don't need to undermine or counter your mind's assertion that it's meaningful. That's fine. Just go to the direct presence, and its meaninglessness in that context will be directly revealed. In other words, you don't need to counter the one thing. Just don't try to negate anything. Just go to the positivity, and it self-negates. Let's say it self-verifies itself, which automatically trumps any other mode. Working with negation is a totally losing game. When you're trying to cancel anything or fix anything or stop doing anything, it's like, big problem, a big tar baby.
Well, one of the things you've said in previous talks that you've had that's been incredibly powerful for me is the concept of more and other. Because there's no negating in more and other.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and have you ever considered that it's more, other, and beyond whatever you think it may be in this moment?
Yeah.
And that kind of eliminated the whole negation of an experience for
Good.
me.
Good.
Because it gave me something that's open-ended, and it doesn't have to diminish or change or make anything wrong in order for it to be what it is.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's... And whenever I'm in a situation and I catch myself in that process, I'm like, more, other, and beyond.
Yes, very good. Yeah, and a spin-off of that, or the deep implication of that is that realization is not the abandonment or solution of your neurotic personality. It's more another. It's actually an augmentation. It's an addition. You get to take your sloppy personality and your insanity along with into this amazing field of transcendence. Because that's where it is and has always been. That's what it has always been. You don't need to, the naive fantasy that we need to fix ourselves or to abandon ourselves or somehow leave our pathetic smallness into some transcendental hugeness. It's not like that. The transcendental hugeness is right here, and the pathetic smallness is that, and you just need to get there, and more and other is the magic key that shows the way that works. A wave doesn't need to stop being a wave in order to be the ocean. It already is the ocean. And it's the wave too. The wave is the ocean is the wave. There's no either or there. And likewise, our little personal, neurotic, twisted, emotionally scarred selves are transcendental wholeness. One and the same. Always were. And just noticing that fact is the powerful lever. And more another is the way that works. Sure.
So, I've been ignoring some things. You were talking about conceptual constructs, how we view the world, all that, and some particular spiritual constructs having to do with there's only now.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I've had, now that I really look at it, at least 3 experiences where I saw exactly what would happen, plus 12 hours,
mm-hmm.
plus 20 seconds, like that.
Sure.
So, what do you do with that? Or do you do anything with that?
Well, it illustrates the point that all interpretations are inaccurate. So there's only now maybe a nice affirmation in some contexts in terms of disentangling someone from a real long historical narrative in the sense of being stuck in the inevitability of their shitty history. But it doesn't mean it's ultimately true. Because saying there's only now begs the question, okay, fine, but what is now? And is now not then? Maybe then is now. Maybe they're the same. In a way completely beyond what you might ordinarily think in terms of history and time passing and all this kind of thing. Maybe it's just weirder than that. I mean, the basic fact is that nothing makes any sense whatsoever in actuality. I mean, any at all. And that certainly includes exclusivity, like now as opposed to not now, like it's that way or some other way. Like, how about just both and? How about none of the above? How about, there's only now, but it's more another? So, maybe it includes a then, and maybe it's not a then or a now. Maybe it's something else. It's just too weird to even talk about. But here it is. And you're never going to solve that riddle. You're never going to get to the bottom of that conundrum. So why even try? Why not just let go of it? Because again, any holding of anything to be any particular way is ultimately an error, or let's just say inaccurate. And those inaccuracies, if you hold them to be the case, will be stumbling blocks. They'll be anchors, unnecessary anchors that you're anchoring yourself to in wide open space. It's like, why? Why designate arbitrary limit? Why, here you are in infinite space, why draw a circle and stand in it and say, this is where I'm going to stay? I mean, on the other hand, why not? But just be aware that you're doing that if you do that, rather than thinking, no, it's only now. That's true. Anything that is true cannot be said, even remotely. It's just because that's a really red flag. Anything that you can say that seems to be true is like wrong, red light blinking, error.
In a purely pragmatic sense, I find that exists simultaneously now is really helpful. And I do craniosacral therapy and work with clients, you know, and it's amazing what happens if, you know, like in whatever moment now is, they go back to a moment of trauma and redo it the good way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how much energy moves and changes, and you know, major shifts happen. And,
Sure.
yeah, and but that only works because then is now. You know.
Well, maybe.
In a pragmatic sense.
Yeah. More powerfully, it only works because it works.
Okay.
And God knows what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and if you can snap your fingers and have that work, what's up with that?
Okay.
You know, and basically all bets are off. You know, magic rules. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no theory that is ultimately true. So again, why shackle yourself? You can. I mean, that's a fine. You know, it's a fine mode. It's like, okay, all time is available right now. Okay, cool. But why even that limitation? Why not just you know, time, space, what? What are you talking about? Why bother to assert these things unnecessarily? And anything you assert is ultimately unnecessary. I mean, on the other hand, as I said, why not? But be with the why not, as opposed to it's this, and then just make it up as you go along. If it's convenient, if you want to say, okay, our theory right at the moment is such, and that's how it is, you know, and now it's not. Now we're going to have a different theory, you know. So make it up as you go along. You know, you have a lot more freedom. I mean, why shackle yourself to a theory, you know, no, this is how it is and this is how I'm going to approach it. I mean, on the other hand, why not? If you want to do that, that's cool. But you don't need to. You can just wing it. You know? Because the native mode of this is inconceivable. You know, it's beyond anything goes. You know, I mean, you know, magic runs amok is probably closer to that's not true, but that's probably closer to its native mode than most things. I mean, that's what I mean when I say this is transcendental. I mean, it's really, you cannot get a handle on it. I mean, just in the strongest possible sense, can't be done. And it is endlessly and bottomlessly and limitlessly surprising. There's absolutely nothing that it can't do. Anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. Literally anything can happen. I mean, think about that. I mean, you want weird. Yeah, you want weird. I mean, you know, how weird is that? So, you know, the implication of that is there's no reason to suppose there's anything you can or can't do. There's no reason to not do whatever you want. You know, because you don't know whether or not you can. Anything can happen. Do the impossible. Why not? The impossible has absolutely no meaning.
So Peter, if there's if the human being has a tendency to overthink and try to interpret, is there an element or ingredient that exists on the planet that we know of that really is more in flow with that we can contemplate, or do you understand what I mean? Is there
I'm not sure.
Is a mineral kingdom, like fish kingdom, or the air kingdom, or any of these subtle forms?
Like any. You mean as an antidote or as a resonance of revelation?
As a resonance.
Anything. Watch the subtle dynamism of anything. I mean, watch clouds bubble in the sky. Watch fish swim. Watch, rainfall. I mean, this incredible intricacy of busyness and elaborate interaction, which is very much what happens in thinking. And you can come to see that thinking is not a problem. It's just an energy form. It's a resonant mode that energy tends to manifest in, to whatever degree it does. Just like flowing water, or
thinking seems to distract us. It seems to.
Yeah, it seems to distract us, and that's a fascinating phenomenon as well. The fact that we get sucked into thinking is very strange and interesting.
Or even more so the fact that we get sucked into interpreting.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And the whole thing is very strange. And I mean, that's a great target for noticing. It's kind of a sophisticated target, but if you have the wherewithal, I mean, notice when you start getting sucked into your thoughts, notice how that happens. I mean, a really interesting exercise. You want to try an interesting exercise to explore this kind of thing. Turn on a TV or go to a movie or something. And put on some drama show, anything, or a comedy, or anything, doesn't matter. And sit and watch it, and you'll find yourself getting sucked into the content of the show. And then extricate yourself and just see light on the screen of the TV, or light on the screen of the theater, and just be what you're just watching a pattern of light. And then you'll notice yourself getting sucked into the content again, and all of a sudden you're lost, and then you just put yourself back in those. And you can repeat this by going back and forth repeatedly. You can become very familiar with the onset and the dynamism of the seduction, of the way the orientation so spontaneously goes to a belief system, goes to a worldview of this is what's happening, this is current reality.
So it's really moving into a transcendental state. It's moving into a...
It is a transcendental state already. It's just noticing that that's the case. I mean, getting seduced into our interpretations and believing them is mind-boggling. It's a very, very sophisticated exercise of intelligence. I mean, it's mind-boggling. We're used to interpreting that as a problem or difficulty, but it's a city. It's miraculous. It's incredible that this phenomenon can occur so effortlessly and spontaneously. I mean, it's the intelligence showing off. It's just flexing its muscles. Want to see a good trick? Watch this. And we all have, obviously very intimate experience of this phenomenon, and it's a fascinating phenomenon to notice. But it is intrinsically transcendental already, and so it is noticeable as such. It's appreciable as such. And when you've noticed the mystery of it, it's easy. It becomes easier, possibly, to stop demonizing it so much as we're used to doing in spiritual circles. That's sort of the enemy. That's sort of the worst mode is to be sucked into belief. And there's a reason for that, strategically, pragmatically. But in actuality, that's just a posturing. It's not really the case. I mean, it's an inconceivable mystery the way this happens. I mean, it's a sacrament, and it reveals. I mean, this is very profound. It reveals the very nature of what this is reality losing itself in itself, and we exemplify that in our experience in real time, obviously, because we all experience this phenomenon of losing ourselves in their various interpretations and so on. Or losing ourselves in our sensory experience. You're having sex or something that really involves you. You're just like, oh yeah, you're just gone in it. And this is the spontaneous mode. Right here, the absolute is lost in itself. There's nothing happening here but but God being lost in God. That's what's happening. And it's so lost that it spins off as all of this incredible phenomena of all this individuality and individual experiences and delusion and realization, all these various things. But these things are not the actual phenomena. They're just spin-offs of the fundamental fact of the absolute being completely and hopelessly lost in itself. It's like the absolute is completely in samadhi upon itself, and this is its meditation vision. And so it's no surprise that our experience echoes that mode, because that is, one of the very primary modes of reality itself, is to get lost in the energy. Because that's what the universe is doing. The universe is getting lost in itself. It loves it. God is the ultimate narcissist. God is completely head over heels in love with itself. It's just gone. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just the greatest. And it is. So it kind of holds water, And that's our mode too, It's like, this is it. This is it. This is delicious. This is lusciousness. This is fullness. This is transcendental, Love it. And at first, pragmatically we approach it as this or that, and we, try and get away from this and try to do that and try and retrain ourselves away from this and into that. But ultimately, that's not the goal. That's just, the way a circle goes one way, you go around the circle and you go one way and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going and you're going. And by the time you get back to where you started, you're going the opposite direction. So, what seems strategically to make sense at one point in the yoga of unfoldment, you actually come to a point where you're doing exactly the opposite thing at another point. And where you're discriminating and trying to leave modes of entanglement and modes of interpretation at one point. At another point, you actually come and embrace them and participate in them as a sacrament. So it's complex and subtle.
So it's a little bit like being content or being enamored by being lost. In other words, you're really just subtly shifting into the value of being lost.
Yeah, because that's our actual condition. I mean, where are we? Well, we're somewhere in one of the lesser arms of a lesser galaxy, somewhere amidst galaxy clusters that are amidst other galaxy clusters that are amidst other galaxy clusters in infinite space. It's like, in what sense is that not lost? And what are humans doing? Where are we going? Well, we're boldly striving forth into the future to create, whatever. Bullshit. It's like, if every single parameter of this situation is totally out of control, totally lost, totally inconceivable. No one knows where it's coming from, where it's going, what's happening. I mean, in every sense, it's a whoop. So, I mean, lost is just calling a spade a spade. Lost is what we got to work with. And so this is a matter of just getting real, acknowledging that fact, and celebrating it, participate in it, appreciate it in its own terms, and explore its limits, explore its range. See, well shit, there's this lostness here, how much mileage can I get out of it? What are the possibilities? How much fun can I have with this, What are the options here, And it turns out that it's a lot broader spectrum than we usually think. So this is really a matter of learning to think bigger.
Or learning not to think at all.
Well, yeah, but even that is getting a little dogmatic, because that's putting thought against not thought. Thought has fabulous modes for whatever, just like non-thought does.
Big is more than other.
Yeah, absolutely. Thought isn't really thought. I mean, the whole, talking about this stuff is really, I mean, it's fun and all that, but it's really kind of absurd, because it's more than other. Nothing is anything, or anything is anything, or nothing is nothing. What are you going to do with that? But pragmatically, different approaches make sense or or may seem more useful at different points in your process. And at certain points it can make sense to sort of be doing retraining things. At certain points it can make sense to really discriminate between this and that. But at certain other points, exactly the opposite will be what's valuable and what's to the point. And the one is not intrinsically good and the other is not intrinsically bad. There's no good and bad. It's just a matter of practicalities. And there's not even a rule book because there's no one else can tell you what the practicalities are. You get to make it up as you go along. Make up your own system. You know, you don't like what someone is saying to do, just like say, screw that, I'm going to do everything exactly the opposite. You know, and hey, make it work. Why not?
So I had a couple of odd things happen this week, and just brief background. I've had what seem to be past life memories of being somebody in the Catholic Church, Middle Ages, and then making the mistake of waking up in that period and making the mistake of talking about it. And
bad move.
Ultimately. Okay. First memory I have of being panicked was being loaded onto a school bus that was essentially a roving Bible course from elementary school. First memory of panic, which kind of makes sense in that context. So historically, I have distanced myself from anybody pretty much who espouses anything that looks Christian. And something weird happened this week in that I was at UCLA. I'd been working. It was around 5:30. I was starting to fall asleep in the lab because it was dark and it was like, so I got to get outside. So I was sitting in this common area, and these two students come up to me, and I immediately got to read, oh, Christian. And they wanted to talk to me. So instead of giving them this, I said, sit down. And so we started talking, and what happened was interesting in that a lot of energy started moving through me. And it was kind of like, it felt like the gear shift in my brain switched into neutral. And so I just started talking. And they asked me what my experience was. I told them what my experience was. And oddly enough, they listened, and I got on a subtle level that it completely confused the crap out of me. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't weird. It was just something.
Sure.
And then the next day, encountering someone in a restaurant that I'd never met, and started talking to her, and she was carrying a Bible. Which before, and it's not like I'm looking to convert or anything like that. It's just like weird. So those were my two discontinuous experiences this week.
Sure. Well, as far as the past life stuff, you know, basically we are in a field of apparent patterning that conveys meaningfulness. In terms of the historicity of anything, I mean, whether a vision is of a past life or of an alternative life or just a fantasy or just whatever, is a moot point. It's a pattern. It's an apparent pattern that seems to convey meaningfulness. And the same thing about here. I mean, is this even here? Maybe this is just an apparent pattern that's conveying meaningfulness. So, you know, getting to the bottom of trying to, you know, was it a past life or not? Is just, you know, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? It doesn't matter how you spin that, because it's just trying to define the undefinable anyway. The point is the meaningfulness, and in this context, it seems to be meaningful because we have these synchronous kind of events that are showing up, where you are clearly letting yourself transgress some boundaries that you had, you know, sort of held
Set
pretty.
in place.
Yeah, you'd invested some importance in them, and now you're letting go of that investment a bit, and it's liberating. I mean, in some sense, it's transforming. And this is part and parcel of what the mechanism, the ongoing mechanism of unfoldment looks like. It's this kind of restructuring of the subtle energy body, where, you know, we color outside the lines. We let ourselves start coloring outside the lines, and it comes when it comes, and it's, you know, if it's authentic, it arises spontaneously in the flow of experience rather than being contrived. But it does, you know, eventually, of course, we find behaviorally and in terms of ways of being in different energy situations and so on, it broadens our repertoire. Because we get out of our own box, and lo and behold, there's life outside the box. Who'd have thought? You know, and if there's life outside the box a little bit, what's it like way over there? And all of a sudden, woo! You know, the sky's the limit. But yeah, this is a very good illustration of this process. You know, and it's also very typical. These events show up internally and externally, and it's the same, inside outside. What does that mean? It's just more theory.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I'm aware of the fact that what I'm calling past life may not be that.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I hear you. And it's fine, calling it past life is not a problem. Just, you know, I would recommend not locking in that that's what it is in any sense.
Defines me.
Yeah. It's a reflection of meaningfulness. And you can't pin down what the meaningfulness is, because again, it's open-ended and more and other and so on and so forth. But the fact that it's vital, the fact that it is meaningful, in other words, it means something, it's happening, and it has some charge, that's the important part, because then it's an aspect, it's a sign of this energy dancing with itself, reorienting to itself, which is the actual event, the important event. What it looks like is irrelevant, it's just conveniences. But that's great. We'll break for lunch in about 15 minutes. Is it too early, or are people starting to get hungry?
No.
Okay.
Okay, going to come at quarter after. It's about 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah, we'll break in a little while. Yeah.
Yes. Do you have any comment about, well, I have what I consider a disturbing dream. It repeats itself in variations. It seems like it always ends up where there's a lot of unplanned and unexpected chaos at the end, where I'm overwhelmed with responsibilities and I don't know how I'm going to get out of it in time, and that's about the time I start waking up. I'm wondering, is it up to me to define what's going on, or is it just some uncomfortable environment I'm sleeping in?
No, I mean, dreams are real, and they happen they are what they are. But the thing about dreams is you don't need to figure them out. The fact that you're dreaming it's doing the work. Just experiencing those patterns is participating with those energies in a very profound way, and that participation works itself out over time. So just the fact that these dreams come is sufficient. It's not like you need to sort it out or figure it out or extrapolate it into your waking life or not. But again, you might find situations showing up in your waking life which are similar, and then you're just working with the same energies in a different context.
Oh. Okay, so So I was asking a lot of questions, seeing if any of them land on me. Like, does this mean I'm so and so, or whether?
Yeah, but that's trying to figure it out, and you don't need. It's unnecessary. Because you can't. It's really nonlinear. There's no answer to it means this. It means exactly this, and it doesn't mean this. It's not like that. It's a multidimensional gestalt, like an anchor, like a point where infinite numbers of lines cross, and there's a certain pattern of energies there, and that's how it's showing up in your dream. But just being with that is participating in that whole thing working itself out.
So. Okay, a quick answer, just be with it.
Yeah, and this applies to our lives too. You don't need to succeed or fail in life, you just need to go through it. Being with your life, being in your life is doing the work. That's the work. Just being who you are is the job you're here to do. You're not here to solve anything or achieve anything, or not. You're not here to, maybe achieving things is what happens or whatever. But that's not the point. The point, just like with dreams, the point is not to make sense of it or to solve it, or it's not a maze that has an answer and you're supposed to work your way through to some finish line. Just being with these energy patterns the way they show up is itself what's happening here, and it's profoundly meaningful. That nothing more than that needs to occur.
So, say being with it is basically listening for notes.
Well, noticing is being with it is the most efficient way to be with it. But even being with it stupidly, even just going through your life like an idiot and being slung around by it, is fine. It's because again, you don't need to realize. You don't need to realize what this is. It's unimportant. What needs to happen is what's already happening. There's nothing that needs to happen that doesn't happen. So whatever happens is by definition absolutely fine, and it's exactly what needs to happen. And there's no remainder. There's nothing left undone. There's nothing like, boy, it would have been great if I just. It's not like that.
Well, it's like radiance is the only thing going on.
Yes.
And so everything has to be basically perfect under that umbrella.
Yes. Yes. Radiance is perfect, and it's the nature of radiance to show up as apparently meaningful patterns and meta patterns, all multidimensional and unanalyzable. And that's the simple fact. And that fact stops right there. You don't need to do anything with it. You don't need to sort it out. Nothing needs to happen. Just that fact of it showing up is 100% of the job. And that's already done. Never stops. You can't turn it off.
Yeah, I identify with what you say when you watch the Olympics on TV.
Mm.
I mean, the tremendous desires and fears, drama that goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And it's either they get it or they don't.
Sure. But just being there
If they
is.
don't, they don't.
But just being there is a win.
Right.
Just being anywhere is a win. Watching it on TV is a win. You get the gold medal for sitting and watching the Olympics on TV. I'm a world-class Olympics watcher.
I can import.
Always going to be something with you, Stan. But yeah, just that principle alone is the entirety of liberation. Just see that what has to happen is complete just by it happening. There's nothing you need to do, nothing that needs to be achieved, nothing needs to be solved, nothing needs to be not solved. It just doesn't matter. The fact that it showed up means that that's the finish line. Everything is done just by appearing. And wow, I mean, feel what that feels like. It's kind of a load off, It's like, nice. So even our striving and our grappling with things and all that doesn't need to be different. Nothing needs to happen with that. It's just, that's fine too. It just needs to show up. And you can't ever get to the bottom of or sort out why it needs to show up or what it is even that's showing up, because it's not what you think it is. You can't say what's actually happening. Hi.
I just wanted to thank you for the last meeting. I was talking to you about the percentage you give me my favorite and all that, and I just wanted to thank you because I took what you said and I applied it, or I tried to be aware of what was going on, and I felt there was a relaxation, and it seems like there's more of a backing off now, and not so much, well, I know what this is, and this is how I'm interpreting, and I'm going to react to it now, and all that. So I wasn't 100% in it, but I did notice that there was kind of a little, like a switch, a little shift. And I noticed that it did affect the other, because I wasn't feeding into it. However, like I say, it's not 100%, but I noticed, just that little bit. It was really good to see that. And it's kind of getting a little more, how should I say, not hope, but in other words, that there is something to it. It can change, and it's not really up to me to make that change. But as I change how I react and how I think about things, it's creating that more of a positive effect.
Yeah, just open-ended possibility and alternative ways to approach things and to be with things.
Right.
And so we have a lot more freedom than we're used to thinking. You don't have to do things a certain way. And when you do things in a different way, you have different options, different alternatives, and different kinds of things happen. So, we can discover a lot of freedom and a lot of possibility in noticing that there are alternatives. You don't need to be locked into, a certain fixed approach to things.
Right. I also felt that it also helped the other. It was beneficial to the other.
Oh yeah, yeah. Relationship is funny because what you bring to it, it's sort of made up in real time by what you bring to it. And if you bring something different to it, it's going to be different. Changes everything.
Yeah, so thank you.
So why don't we knock off for lunch? Today I can be here till about 1:30 or 1:45, so we have plenty of time. It's about 11:30 now. Take about a half hour for lunch, whatever, and then we can take another little break before we have to knock off. So we've got plenty of time to take a leisurely. Didn't recognize you. You said yes.
Reset. I misunderstood. Okay. For that, we go over the freeway, hang a left on Sawtell. And then left as a freeway. Okay. No, you don't even go on. You keep going. You go up here to the pond.
Yeah.
Hang a left. Go past the pole, but I go over the freeway. You're headed west towards the ocean. Hang a left on Sawtell, and then a left on the on-ramp to the freeway.
So if you're going in the direction of Pico?
No, Pico's north. We're going south.
Because of so used to it.
I know you're not navigating after your map.
Yeah.
You could just take Sepulveda all the way down. It'll bring you right to the airport. Yeah, that'd be easier. It's a little slower, but it'll get you there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Forgot to sign off online here. I'll leave that and come back. We'll be back in about half an hour. Well, look at that. We're back.
Back in my course. Oh no, that's Dan's course.
To continue from what Magda shared with her different response with a person and how. So would it be clear to say that that's a new maturity, then that in noticing the response of another person that has an effect on another person, we're not really giving that meaning other than seeing the pattern of it?
Sure. Becoming aware of the open-endedness of pattern and the unstuckness of pattern, and that there's so many different alternative ways energy can work itself out, as a way of exploring, the fact that you're not actually stuck in anything, a lot of times, like in a relationship or something, it might seem to be stuck if you're sort of used to approaching it a certain way, and another person approaches it a certain way. It can seem like a kind of a ongoing thing, but that's not an inevitability. And this kind of an exploration discovers that there's a lot of ways to be with people, and there's no limit. There's no limit, and there's no limit to how things can be. So, and the point is just to discover that and come to appreciate that unlimitedness of the different ways the energy can show up.
And at that point, there is no really given meaning to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because you discover that everything is meaningful, but you can never really pin down exactly, precisely what it is or what's going on.
That was the meat of my question.
Yeah,
right
yeah.
That's the part that.
Yeah. But there's this wonderful, juicy meaningfulness to everything, but you can never pin it down. You can never get to what it is. It's like good food. You can taste it and you think, wow, this is so good, but you can't verbalize exactly what it is. It's just like, wow, that was so delicious. And all energy conditions are ultimately like that. They can't be verbalized. They can't be compartmentalized or collapsed down to one definition or one way of defining it or referring to it. in a profound way, you're never really in relationship with anyone else. You're always just in relationship to your own energy, and other people just serve as conveniences for enacting that. I mean, not to sound heartless about it, but ultimately, the more profound and flexible you are with your own energy, the more accessible and available you are to be with other people, because they're one and the same. As you learn to become more directly engaged in the reality of your own presence, of your own energy, it translates across the board to every aspect of your functioning, and every aspect of the specifics of your life can become transformed and open up and become more flexible and more vital and more vibrant and more dimensional. So just the one thing of being with, of being more directly engaged with the primal fact of your energy presence, it improves every aspect of your functioning, every aspect of your engagement with your life, without needing to do it piecemeal, this and then this and then this and then. It's just that one thing, just being with the energy more directly, like we were talking about at the beginning today. Does all that comes with. It's a universal cure. If only I could sell it. I can barely give it away.
Is it correct to say that if I set myself free, which is really what we're doing with you?
Yes.
And I'm also setting others free, being true to what I am.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I'm seeing. It's really dependent on how I am.
Yes. Yes. In your openness, you enable openness everywhere, in everything.
So is that the kudos that you get from coming here for $15 a day?
Which kudos is that?
That as you open yourself, and it opens everybody else, and by opening everybody else, then it has a profound influence on you as well.
Sure. But it's not about me and others, it's about
us.
This opening. The opening, because opening is ultimately impersonal. And it's a sacrament. It's beautiful. It's the purest activity of this, is to go deeper into itself, and to participate in that is the greatest beauty, the greatest value.
He doesn't get any of the money anyways.
Lake takes it all, go figure.
Work that out, Lake.
Lake has 10 Rolls Royces.
I saw some interesting energy display, and I always felt like it's not important, but I feel it so often that every time I was trying to, no, that's not it. When I walk, I would have a little hat on, and everything that's under my view is like buzzing, everything. But when there's slightly wind comes, the hat starts shaking a little bit, and the whole field is shaking with it. But it's pure air, there's nothing.
Yeah.
But it's just the kind of, the whole thing vibrates with this. So from at the beginning, I would immediately hold my hand. No. I tried several times, and when I hold it, of course there's still buzzing, but it doesn't have this kind of wave because vibration with the head. And finally, I said, okay, I'm gonna let me go, just to let see the whole thing wave together. But it is kind of weird how the empty air starting vibrate, with the whole entire view.
There's no air, there's just experience, and experience is always vibrating.
There's adding different frequencies.
Yeah.
Instead of its own, but then
Yeah.
also up and down between the factors.
Well, you can't get to the bottom of it. And the important thing isn't the specifics of it's this or that. The important thing is to notice the vitality, notice that vibrancy. Presence is always alive, it's always vibrant, it's always vital. It's never inert and dull and dead and in any sense static. It's always, the energy of experience that is present as your experience is always, it's alive, it's vital in every sense. In every sense. And noticing this is a very easy way to be with experience nakedly and directly. Because we're used to thinking of things as static, the floor is just the floor, it's just sitting there, it's not doing anything. But if you actually look at this floor, your experience of the floor is very alive, it moves in all kinds of subtle ways and all sorts of, and so on and so forth, sound, everything's the same. And so if you notice this, you notice, right away all the sort of the static ways we hold, the objective world is just there and it's just sitting there and it's just like a stage for me to act. It's like, no, it's not like that. It's something entirely different. It's a vibrant, living field of energy. Your experience is well, I call it radiant presence. It's this alive, pure intelligence. And you can be with it as that, and it will reveal itself as that. And in that context, what this is and what you are is very clearly and self-verifyingly seen to be entirely different than we're used to thinking.
I had an interesting experience this week where a really big emotion came up that had been repressed for a long time, and so at the beginning it's almost overwhelming. So just experiencing that it was unavoidable because it was so big, and then as I was experiencing it changed and became more subtle. And there was a moment in the subtleness where it was like, gee, this isn't as interesting as it was when it was big, And then it was like, but that doesn't have to be true. And it's like, what if I experienced the subtlety of this, as if I was seeing through a microscope, And it was like, and then I dove into the subtlety of it, and it was just completely alive, but in a totally different way than the big emotion at the beginning had been. It was a totally different experience, but no less interesting. And so until it disappeared.
And this reveals, the one of the primal aspects of experience is that it it endlessly morphs as you are with it. As you look into it, it endlessly opens into something else, opens into something else, opens into something else, without limit, without bottom, without end. That's why I call my website The Open Doorway, because it indicates that experience is not a static thing. Experience is like a door you're always going through into something else. Any experience, any and all experience is that. And the something else you're in is just another door that opens to something else, and so on forever. And if you don't go through the door, it's not its fault. It's there. And so, and by being with your experience this way, you discover its infinity. You discover its open-endedness. You discover the concrete fact of more another. That any experience instantly becomes more another just by looking at it. By really going into anything, it's like a hyperspace journey. It's like Star Trek. You're just off and running, exploring bold new worlds or whatever.
It was like that. It was like space.
Oh, yeah.
That is the subtlety of it.
Experience is like space.
Yeah, like outer space.
Yeah. When you get very good at noticing, your experience will be very much like just being in deep space all the time, because you're just basically in an open field of infinite sparkles.
Mm-hmm.
And you can never tell where you are because the sparkles are totally unstatic and dynamic and morphing and never repeating. And that's what this is, It's not that it becomes that. It is that. It always is that. It's just here to be noticed. And when you notice that, it's a very different perspective on where you are and what's going on. It's a very different place to be with different implications than just being this pathetic little neurotic human stuck in your sorry life and blah, 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 right?
Is this anything like what some teachers call Satori? I get that this is more, Satori is about just somehow being connected to what you're observing, so it's like a meld.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of different ways of classifying all these different things, and it's ultimately unimportant. The main thing is to firsthand discover that your experience is much more than you're used to thinking it is, and then you're off and running, because then you're right from the get-go, you're intrinsically unstuck. You're exploring newness. You're in, wow, this is something else. I'm somewhere I've never been before. This is amazing, And there's no limit, and because it just goes on from there. It just continues opening, continues going into newness. And so whether it's Satori or Samadhi or this or that, it's just a matter of people that classify these things can debate that with themselves. But the thing is to experience it, and that experience is available right just in any experience. Any totally mundane experience. Hanging out in the evening after dinner and reading a magazine. It's like, hey, take off. That's it. You don't need specialness to find specialness, because any experience is as special as it gets, and is limitless and endless and open-ended, and there's no end to the range of qualities you can find in any experience, no matter what you're starting from. You start with your thumbnail, and that is a doorway to infinity. Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to look for a doorway, because it's always omnipresent.
Yeah. The doorway is not something special. The doorway is what any experience is. If you just attend to it, it will immediately morph into something else. It may be subtle, may whatever, but it will morph and it won't stop. It'll just be like, God, did someone dose my Coke? I mean, what's going on here?
Anywhere, anything, yes?
Anything. Experience itself. It's not what you're experiencing, because what you're experiencing is always experience. And experience is like that. You know, it's slippery, it's fluid, it's unstuck, it's unlocked, it's absolutely unstatic, it's absolutely dynamic, alive, vital, vibrant, etc., etc. Not in the abstract, but just in fact. And all this is not about theory or philosophy. It's just about experience. Just, you know, so simple. Just be with your experience directly, not categorizing it, and you'll discover you're just in this vibrant sea of indeterminacy that's just taking off every which way. It just is that, you know. It's always that. Always has been that. Even, you know, we stifle it and try and impose normalcy and impose staticness on it. We pretend to, you know. We convince ourselves that we're doing that. You know, the walls are not breathing. The walls are not tingling. They're just sitting there. They're straight. They're not moving. You know, but that's a lie. If I really look at what the wall's doing, it's like it's all over the place. You know. So it's just really a matter of being honest, not telling reality what it is, but let it be what it is. Let it show what it is. Let it tell you what it is. And what it is this astoundingly vibrant, alive, open, you know, unstable, this, you know, transcendental process, you know, profoundly meaningful, profoundly intelligent. It just is that, you know, it just is. And that's the fact, and it's real easy to see that and just be with that, you know, whenever you can from time to time, and that is the entirety of the spiritual path right there. So simple and easy and fun. I mean, it's totally fun. You know, when you start getting the hang of this, you can just trip. I mean, you can just, boredom becomes a thing in the past. You can sit for 4 hours in a doctor's office and you won't be tempted to pick up a magazine just looking at the wall with a shit-eating grin on your face. Because you're, woo! No, you're the life of the party without having to do anything. I mean, other people might not think so, but that's their problem.
Just sitting here listening to you, and that is, it's moving forward and right now.
Yeah,
it's sort of like a kaleidoscope, and I feel my mind going towards thinking about the situations and meanings. So that's like the kaleidoscope too. It's like forming like clouds and and
yeah. I mean, you can watch. I mean, watch just trip out on thought. Watch thought. Thought is just constant. I mean, the thought's completely unstable. It's just this light show that's just like just drifting in and out and going here and shooting off there, and you know, I mean, God, it's just endlessly entertaining, unpredictable, alive. And it embodies profound meaning. I mean, you know, we have these amazing ideas. And you go, wow, that's incredible. One after another, and it's just more of this vibrancy, more of this, you know, this reality, the actuality exploring its own nature through sort of virtual aspects of itself as presentations. You know, all the colors, all the shapes, all the juxtapositions, all the ideas, all the sounds. You know, they're just endlessly cascading through experience, never repeating, they never stop. It's completely alive, completely dynamic, and you know, I mean, this is self-evident. But that's not just the backdrop of experience. That's the punchline. That's the point of the whole thing. It's just this amazing, living, changing vibrancy. You know, just that. It's so easy. You know, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to accomplish anything. Just this presence is the profundity. It's the absolute profundity. It's the top of the pyramid, so on and so forth.
So I had this very strange thing happen with my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had a lot of strange things going on,
Mm-hmm.
and done a lot of tests, but not finding anything really specific.
Mm-hmm.
And last night there was this strange. I appreciated you saying kaleidoscope because it just dawned on me that that's what it was in the periphery of my vision. kaleidoscope going on, and I looked, up in the corner, and it, and it wasn't there, and then I went straight in and started to this kaleidoscope, and it was accompanied by a very kind of strange feeling in my head.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, oh my God, what is this? Is there something really wrong here that they haven't discovered, or is this, what you talk about?
Yeah.
And prior to that, during the day, I had this feeling that there was sort of a black netting material, sort of,
Mm-hmm.
not specifically, I couldn't see details of it, but kind of clouding my vision a little bit. And then late last night, I had the kaleidoscope thing going on. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
Well, it's always what I'm talking about, because even if, suppose some doctor comes up and says, oh, it's this, and says some Latin name, you have some condition that's, blah, 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 and oh, it's very serious, and, we're going to put you on drugs and maybe surgery in a couple of years. Even if he has that story, it's just his take on things. Someone else might say something entirely different. A shaman, you ask a shaman what's going on with you, they might say something different. You ask someone else, these are just opinions and interpretations, because what anything actually is unfathomable energy presence. Even if it is, suppose you have a brain tumor and your eyes are, that's just a description for something that's inconceivable. No one knows what it is. It's putting a name on something is not actually getting a handle on what it is. And Western science and medicine is full of this. We have all sorts of elaborate equations and descriptions that describes this is this and that's that and this is the way this works. But no one knows what anything is. And you can't say what it means in the big picture. Oh, it's a terrible thing. It might kill you. Who says dying is such a bad thing? Maybe that's a good thing. So the fact that it might kill you painting that as bad is according to some sort of a witch doctor metaphysic that defines death as failure, as the worst thing that can happen, which is pretty arbitrary. The point I'm trying to make being that anything you experience, whether it seems to be physical, mental, spiritual, whatever, is the same thing, is ultimately this energy presence. What's your body? Your body is a mysterious energy system that is spontaneously present. It's just here. You didn't put your body here. You didn't plan to have your body and plan it out and draw it out and design it and make it and recreate it every day. It's just poof, it's just bang, there it is, like a genie waves a magic wand and there's your body. It's this astounding, mysterious energy apparition. What's it for? What's it do? Oh God, how can you answer that question? It's a mystery. It's astounding. It's a poem. It's a koan. It's like, what's the body for? Gosh, there's no answer to that question. So, this is what we're talking about. It's not like there's some things that are spiritual and some things that are subtle energy and profound, and there's other things that are just, material or physical. Those are all just interpretations. There is nothing but this miraculous energy presence. And ultimately it's the same. And I'm not saying not to go to doctors and not have them say their Latin words and give their prognostications. That's all fine, whether you do that or not. But what the phenomena is and what the doctor is and what everything is a completely unfathomable energy system that you're never going to get to the bottom of. And just because someone comes up with their version of it is not definitive. It just is not.
My eyesight just fluctuates daily and sometimes hourly. It's just very strange.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah, it sounds fascinating.
And I was telling Rafe at the break about this experience I had a month or two ago about I was standing in the backyard under the black walnut tree, and I'm looking at the leaves hanging down in front of me in the grass and the sunlight kind of coming through and everything. And I had this experience of this form disappearing, fading, and then disappearing altogether. And I thought, so that's what it's like.
Sure.
And it was just it was very awesome, very awesome. It wasn't scary at all.
Sure.
And in that moment, I think I lost fear of death.
Good.
For a moment, anyway.
Yeah, that's good. the energy can present itself any way, and we're used to what we call normalcy, and something comes along that's radically different than normalcy, and we immediately, oh my God, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with it? Because we're kind of normalcy junkies. We think normalcy is what's important. But there's not really any such thing. And things can change subtly, or things can change drastically, but it's still basically the same thing. It's still basically this amazing energy presence. And noticing that is powerful. Even if you do have a serious physical problem, you need medical attention, that's fine. That's an amazing trip itself. I mean, how astounding is that? You go somewhere and you have surgery and you have this and you have that. It's like, what a trip.
Oh boy.
Yeah. No, really. Yeah.
I don't want that anymore, but yippee.
No, sure. No, you might not want it, but you don't get what you want. You get what you get, and you don't know what you're going to get even as you're getting it. You can't know what it is.
That's very true.
And so this is the power in being with this as the miraculous and ultimately unanalyzable, undescribable energy that it is, instead of being with it in terms of, oh, it's this or oh, it's that, is that it is empowering, it is liberating. You discover that you are beyond it. What you are is not dependent upon what it looks like. And that is a very powerful discovery.
I remember thinking when I had the fading and the disappearing experience, thinking everything just remains the same.
Yeah, everything remains the same. You go to sleep, the world disappears, but everything's basically the same.
Yeah.
You start dreaming and a new world appears, but everything's basically the same. I mean, it looks different, but it looks different every second anyway.
I mean, it looked different because the storm wasn't there. It looked different because the leaves were moving in the breeze.
Sure.
The sunlight was moving. And then, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And, you can have that kind of exploration anytime, any instant, just by being with your experience, just nakedly, just this presence, without holding it to be this or that. And things disappear, things come and go, and it's just, but nothing changes. You never gain or lose anything. What the present moment is just what it's always been. It looks completely different, but it doesn't. What it is doesn't change. What you are in the present moment is what you were when you were 2. Everything whatsoever about you looks different. But what you are, your experience, your being, is exactly the same. It will be for all time, because it's not a function of time and space. Time and space exist because of you. You don't exist because of time and space. Like you start dreaming and there's a whole new space. It's proof. There it is. And time's passing and things are happening. It can be a very detailed world. It can seem very real. Right? You wake up and poof, it's gone. And you look back and there's never even there. And yet because you are, it can appear and disappear. And same with this, here's this incredibly intricate real world and all of these interactions and complexities. You go to sleep at night, poof, it's gone. This is gone. You die in your sleep, it's never going to come back. And you won't miss it. You won't even know it's gone. But what you are is and will be the same. It's because it's eternal.
Sometimes with these doorways, they'll occur like at work, I'm walking down the hall and there's the doorway. And I kind of just go ahead and slide into it. And then a moment later comes the thought, oh, there I am. And then the thought that follows that is, well, you just blew it. Just lost it, right? But then I think some understanding comes in because it's kind of thoughtless. It's like, let it go, whatever next.
Yeah. And the losing it is just another doorway. It looks like, oh, you're calling that doorway losing it. You're calling the space you go into, oh, now I've lost it.
Right.
But it's not that at all. It's an entirely new space. You've never been in before. Yeah, it's just shifted. And that just means you've gone through a doorway. And of course it endlessly shifts. It doesn't ever not shift. Does it?
Very good.
You know, we used to play in this gamesmanship, qualifying our experience. You know, this is good, that's not. This is spiritual, this is stupid. You know, but that's all make believe. You know, that's just really heavy-handed. You can't say what anything is. And you can't say how anything happens. You know, everything is just another condition of transcendental energy presentation. Call it. You know, and it just morphs from one mode into another mode endlessly. And it never becomes any less transcendental. You can never say what's actually happening or how it happens, right? I mean, you go into some moment of stupidity or confusion or something like, how does that happen? What's that made of? I mean, it's just inconceivable.
Another doorway.
Yeah. Just endless.
Yeah. Like my friend used to say, it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, truly, it's all good. The name of the highest Buddha in the Dzogchen tradition translates as all good. For everything good. Kuntu Zangpa. Kuntu Zangpa.
So being and letting things be where they are is total freedom.
Yes. Yes. And you can't not do that. But if you pretend to try to not do that, it can feel as if there's stuckness, which is actually a lie because it's always total freedom. But you might not notice that. You might feel trapped or stuck. But only because you're trying to make it into something or thinking it's supposed to be different or struggle. You push and pull on your experience. When you can. Energy always works this way. But you can see it in physics. If you get in the swimming pool, if you stand up in a swimming pool and push on the water, pull on the water, it's this turbulence, big force, and takes a lot of work. When you just let go and float, it's effortless. It's very easy, even if the water's moving. Like say you're in a river or in a stream. You want to swim against the stream, it's a lot of work. Or even if you want to swim across the stream, it's a lot of work. But just to let the water carry you, it's effortless. It's so easy. And it goes where it goes. And experience is just like that. When you just be with this unstoppable flow as it is, I mean, how easy. It just goes where it goes. And it's completely, there's no force, there's no stuckness, there's nothing pushing back. When you push your hand, it's just open, easy. Free flow, or free fall. Yeah. And experience is that already, so why not just let it be that? You know, it's easy, it's fun, and it feels good.
Also letting go.
Yeah. Yeah. When you struggle with life, it can feel like it's pushing on you, but that's just because you're pushing on it. You know, if I push on this seat, it feels like the seat's pushing on me, but I'm the one doing the pushing. If I stop pushing, it's easy, there's no pressure.
Yeah. About being away, did you have a tremendous desire?
Always.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of a twisted kid.
And it was a struggle
Yeah.
to go from teacher to teacher.
No. I'm very well, how can I put this? I'm very critical, and when I would find teachers or systems, I would look at them and I would see the flaws, and I would say, well, there's something there, but you know. And eventually I met this guy who was a friend of my mother's who wasn't a teacher at all. He was a very interesting guy, and there was something going on there. So I started hanging out with him, and the rest is history.
So the practice was with him was hanging out and drinking cocktails?
That's one way to put it.
Where did the music, playing the music come?
Oh, I've always loved music. I've always liked to play music. It's not really coming in, it's just, there you go. I'm a good musician, basically, but I've never been particularly successful at it. So I've always played music and never had much of a career.
I saw the YouTube.
Huh.
Saw your YouTube.
Big Bang number 8.
That's your time.
So for you, what was it like hanging out with Pema, who turned out to be your teacher, and how did that change over time?
Well, it was very profound, because he was, I could intuit that there was something very profound there and profound going on, but it violated all my expectations and and what I thought I was looking for in terms of formulas, everything, because there was nothing there. He was just this weird guy. You know, he's much older than me. I mean, I was just a stupid kid. He was a mature man. And, you know, nothing was particularly happening. We were hanging out. and yet there was just something profound going on. I was like, wait, what's happening here? What is this? This is not like it's supposed to be. This is not that I knew, but I thought I just had preconceptions. It's like, what is this? I've never heard of anything like this. This isn't following the rules. What's going on here? Which was very valuable, of course, because it really deconstructed my ideas of my preconceptions and ideas of sort of the format that things worked in. I discovered, no, it's not like that. Anything can happen.
They didn't wear robes and look like a Buddha or anything whatsoever like that at all.
No. He drank and he told tales of his adventures in South America.
Was he aware of his own openness and even door openness? Was there awareness of that, do you think?
I think he was. We didn't talk about it much.
But there was obviously some kind of transmission of openness that something was happening. Like you said, you didn't know what it was, but it was weird. And
Yeah.
out of your context of what you knew.
Yeah. But all that's not really important because it's irrelevant. I mean, that's what happened to me, but that's not what needs to happen to you. Because the opportunity for limitlessly profound discovery is always available right in your experience, right in the present moment. And the context doesn't matter. The context just doesn't matter at all. In other words, there's nothing outside or circumstantially that has to be just right. This doesn't matter. It does not matter. You can be walking down the street or hanging out in Starbucks drinking a coffee or have someone honk at you and flip you off in traffic. Anything is a moment for being with this astoundingness.
In the 70s, I only knew about Krishnamurti, and even though his writings were beautiful, it just seemed so strange to me. Like he would say something that was funny, and the audience would laugh. He goes, "Don't laugh. Why do you laugh?" It's like, okay, so there's Krishnamurti, and then there was Vernon Howard I spent time with, and this guy, he would have us go hunt for soda cans and beer cans in 100-degree heat in dumpsters and stuff, so that we could hear the false self rage against it, in order to get like this separation. And then there was Bubba Free John before he became Dog Free John, and his early tapes and talks were really cool, but then there was this idea you had to join the ashram. And it all looked pretty bleak, even though there's all this material to work with. It's like, wow, you mean I gotta go and join an ashram, and I'm not gonna do it? So I'm just glad to see it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be anyway. And anyone that tells you different is selling something, or else they're well-intentioned but ignorant, in my opinion.
That's still the divine in its absolute bliss, that ignorance.
Everything.
Everything.
Everything. Everything.
So when I say I'm tired or I'm hot, that mean I'm pushing against something?
No, not necessarily. If you're thinking you shouldn't be tired or shouldn't be hot, you might be pushing against something. It can be delightful being tired. Just, oh God, I'm just exhausted. You're going to go pass out, and it's like, oh yeah, bring it on. But I'm tired. I don't want to be tired. Then you're pushing. Maybe. Well, there's no rules. It's always a loophole. You know, it's always a... Nothing is any particular way, so anything can be any particular way. So pushing and pulling can be not pushing and pulling.
So there's no clues to when you are pushing.
Yeah, there's a clue. The clue is it feels constricting, or it feels somehow bothersome. Not pushing feels easy, feels effortless, feels smooth. Even if the situation or the sensations are not necessarily pleasant. You can have a headache and not push on it. And it's not a problem. You take some aspirin or something, or you go lie down, or you just wait for it to pass. And it's not a problem. But if you're having a headache and, oh God, this is horrible, I don't like this headache, I shouldn't have a headache, this sucks, it hurts so much, oh, I'm in such pain, let me tell you how much pain I'm in. Then it's, you know, it could be a different thing. You're turning it into something. You're making it matter. It's a fact, but it doesn't matter. That's the difference. If you're pushing and pulling on it, it matters. If you're not pushing and pulling, it may be a fact, but it just doesn't matter. It's just the case. And then you work with it however you do, and that doesn't matter either. So I have a headache, maybe I'll take some aspirin. Maybe I'll rub a nap. Maybe I'll have a drink. Maybe I'll just sit and suffer and stew. But none of this yoga is mechanical about do it this way or do it that way. This yoga is about intelligence. And intelligence is always about artfulness and flexibility. And being able to be with things in many ways simultaneously. Being able to break your own rules. Intelligence is the most important factor in spirituality. Unfortunately, you're pure intelligence, so it's a done deal.
There's something going on in my head about, I think a lot of teachers talk about, and people talk about this aspect of integrity, and the integrity of the fabric, or the integrity of the thought process, or the integrity of belief system, the integrity of anything. And pure flexibility and complete fluidness, how does that work with this whole idea of integrity? Or is integrity a trap? The whole idea of the pursuit of that whole idea, is that a trap?
Yeah. Well, again, if you're with it unintelligently, it's a trap. But if you're with anything unintelligently, it's a trap.
Right.
So integrity actually refers fundamentally to the integrity of actuality, the integrity of what you actually are, which is a given. I mean, it can't not be there. But when you rest in that, i.e., when you be what you are, don't try to pretend to others, or mainly to yourself. You can pretend to others, that doesn't matter. But don't pretend to yourself, and usually unconsciously, that you are or should be different than you are. That's when you're fighting your own integrity.
That's the push-pull, really.
Yeah, yeah. But when you just rest in what you are, that is the epitome of integrity. But that doesn't define any modes of behavior or rules of functioning whatsoever. Within that context, you simply exercise your nature, which can be anything. People have drastically different natures, and the important thing is for you to be what you are, not to live up to some external standard of what you're supposed to be according to some theory or something. And one person's integrity will look very, very different than another person's. One person's integrity might be for them to be a bank robber, or whatever, right?
Following your true nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spontaneously arising within them.
Yeah. Because then you're in your PowerPoint, you're in integration, you're with what you are, so you have your own momentum. You have the momentum of your entire history, of basically the whole universe that makes you what you are with you. You're not divided against yourself. So you're in a position of empowerment, and if you then can settle into your full intelligence, which involves letting go of linearity, which is essentially stupidity, letting go of formula, intelligence is flexibility. Intelligence is the ability to handle ambiguity and complexity. It's like maturity. A child expects things to be this or that, but as you mature, you're able to handle complexity and ambiguity and subtle situations that don't resolve themselves into this or that or coherence, and they can be very complex and even have elements in them that are mutually contradictory. And still, you can work with it because you're not needing simplicity. You have flexibility. You have sophistication, and adaptability. And these are the hallmarks of inherent intelligence, which is not slave to formula. You can make up your own rules. You can be flexible. You can adopt. You can improvise. All these kinds of things. And the greater degree to which you can extend to do that, and be settled in the integrity of your actuality, sky's the limit. It's 3 minutes after 1. Why don't we have a 5 minutes break, and then we can get together for another half hour or so. And then I recommend going off and finding an air-conditioned movie somewhere or something. Or a swimming pool.
Dissolve into the lake.
Yeah, well, that's always an option.
These ones that you were familiar with, these are Dzogchen that I came across one day, and I've reread them over the years, and just reading one of them last night.
Yeah.
I like them a lot.
Yeah,
it seems like folks refer to them when in some of your talks. But, there's one phrase there that I think I was getting more. It was always sort of more puzzling to me, but it was like, let the child luminosity merge with the already known mother.
Yeah.
And I was kind of getting that, and
I'm thinking, well, maybe I'd gotten a view, you know, I was sort of seeing the view recently, but no one was pointing it out to me overtly.
These are both really good. This is this one. I don't know this particular translation, but this is one of the absolute standard Dzogchen practice texts.
You kindly gave me that list, which I never got to. You know, a bunch of recommended ones. But what the heck? Yeah.
This is
do you read Ken? I'm really not familiar with Ken Wilber, but do you read him?
No, Ken Wilber is
not your cup of tea.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is good. This is very good. Great to see you. Take care.
I have a couple of Xing Sheng Min translations.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's difficult to translate. You see such different translations of it, but I guess Chinese is like that.
There's like all these pages and all these different languages and all these scholars I was looking at last night. But, you know, just the beginning is enough.
Yeah, no, you get the point of it. I mean, it's really very true.
If you make that cucumber thing, when you pour off all the juice, it's really great to put in water.
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
it looks like cucumber, sugar, mint, lemon water.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, so I figured that the first time I poured it off, it's like,
wait a minute, this smells good.
Yeah, it was like, dynamic lemonade. Oh, by the way, if you want a sweet thing, there's one of those fingers left in there, the fried dough.
Good.
Oh,
I actually have a little bit left.
Oh, you left some, yes.
That's
why I call you a snack. I've been like practically nodding off of it. The heat and having eaten one of those. Yeah.
Okay. Laura, do you know how PayPal takes money? How what? How they PayPal? PayPal? Yeah, how to take your money. What do you mean? Well, I'm sitting at a computer and I'm signed into PayPal and I'm paying for a seminar.
Yeah.
How did they get the
money?
money?
They take it from your credit card. You give them a credit card, or you're registered with them and they have access to your checking account. Right. But I don't give them my credit card, I just give them a credit card, and they take my credit card. And the person when you're paying for a seminar, the seminar pays you percentage to PayPal, as well as paying the credit card.
Right.
But you can pay for trend, and you can arrange it so you pay the credit card, right?
And she is, the thing is, that's the part I was hearing. I called, how did you know this? When you on my credit card.
I'll be back on in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, if they can acknowledge it, that it's not on the credit card, if you don't have credit card. Yeah.
I had a, because of what's going on with my eye, I had a, first I did brainwave stuff, and I discovered that my optic nerves are sluggish, so I see things later than what a normal person would.
Oh, interesting, huh?
Yeah. And,
Never heard of that.
Yeah, it's very strange. And then they actually did a final tap last December.
Oh, yeah?
And that was like an 11 on the Richter scale.
Oh, really?
It was scary and it
Oh,
wasn't
really?
fun. And you never
It was
got-
the first time you had that.
Yeah, and have you ever had that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had cancer. I had all kinds of medical procedures.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not a newbie.
Okay. So yeah, and they found everything was normal, but it was just very strange.
Yeah.
Are you waving to her?
Huh?
Are you waving to her?
Well, my wife just said hi to me, and I just waved back in case she's online.
Oh. Hi, Lily.
So we can all chat. I'm not a big group person. Well, I'm hoping you will.
chat informally that we're not appearing on everybody's brain. Oh, sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Try and get Nancy. She's harder to reach than Jennifer Aniston. Oh, she Jennifer Aniston? Yeah, I'm trying to think of a movie star. No, but I mean, that was the first person that came. I don't know why. That's because you don't have email. No, that's true. Yeah, because, so then you have to reach her, and, yeah. I mean, I have an email, I've never seen it. All right, like not having one. Yeah. Like not having email. That's true. I rarely, I shouldn't say that I never email a lot, but rarely, I don't like giving, let's put it this way, I don't like giving out the emails because I don't need more. Well, no, I just don't want to give
it might be able to
communicate
with you.
I don't want to give people the false impression that they can get a hold of me by email. That way, right.
So not giving out your email is a public service. It's an act of generosity.
There you go. But no. Yeah. I'm so smart, I never got off my checker. Never for years. I haven't done mine either, and I didn't do it. Yeah. And I have this thing in my head that you should be. Me too. I used to do it very consistently for a long time. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know how much I spend in my figure, and I know how much what the numbers in general. Yeah, me too. And so I tell myself, if they're not those numbers, given that I pretty much more, that can be fairly simple way. More chapter. Wow. Then I do something, been amiss, deal with it. Right. I'll go to the bank and say, wait a minute. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. That's my no, I'm just oh, it's yeah. What a wrong thing? I know. I could be with somebody else other than you. Somehow. Thank you. You don't take me seriously. Lucy in the bank, no. No, okay. Although it's Peter who's teaching it. Hello. Could happen, I suppose. You may be in your integrity with your Lucy. I don't know. That is yours. You say my bank sound my Lucy in the bank. Yeah.
So we're back. I'm going to have to take off in about 20 minutes, but we can get a little more chat, get a few zingers in there, and then go find someplace cool.
You've spoken about living from your own integrity, which may differ for each person.
Yes.
And as a corollary to that, sort of making your own rules
yes.
from that.
Yes.
How do you recognize that you're doing that versus simply living from egotism?
Well,
It doesn't
again,
matter.
well, it doesn't matter in one sense because you will if you can, and you won't if you can't. You can't fake it, but you will feel. You'll feel a rightness. You'll feel a clarity. You'll feel an ease. You'll feel you'll feel more integrated. And again, this is what this is really about: is tuning into your own intelligence, and your intelligence will tell you, will show you. You'll get a hit on. Wait a minute, I'm bullshitting myself here. Or, I'm having two really contradictory motivations here. What's up with that? And you sort of get a feeling for, I'm still, in this instance, I'm still kind of being drawn by some kind of notions of social propriety or whatever. I mean, whatever the context is, maybe the opposite. But you get kind of a sense of that. I mean, and again, what I recommend pragmatically is not so much about working on that, but just like I said, like we talked about in the beginning of today, is just being with the naked energy of your experience outside of holding it to be anything, to whatever extent you can do that. And that automatically does everything else. That, just by doing that, you'll tend in the general direction of moving away from being motivated towards relating to your experience in terms of interpretations. You'll move spontaneously towards your own inherent nature more truly. You'll move towards tuning into your own inherent intelligence more directly, and so on and so forth. All of that sort of comes with. So just this one simple, relatively simple, or certainly basic mode of just being with your naked experience unqualified is astoundingly powerful and has all sorts of spin-offs and side effects.
I was thinking about what you said earlier about, because I've thought of this many times about how I'm the same person I was when I was 5 or 4 or 2, whatever this earliest experience I can remember. And I think, well, I'm the same person, and yet I've changed in every way.
Yeah.
So it's quite a conundrum.
Well, what's changed is what being you looks like.
Yeah.
The you that's you is the you that's you when you're sound asleep, which doesn't look like much of anything.
Yeah.
And the way that manifests is different every time you dream. It's different every time a daytime experience appears. It was different 20 years ago than it will be 20 years from now, and so on and so forth. But that's all what it looks like. Even your personality is what it looks like, not what you are. What you are is the fundamental system within which all of this appears. So your personality is an appearance. Your personality isn't you. Your body is an appearance. Your body isn't you, and so on and so forth. All of those appear in the same way that your external environment appears, and it constantly changes and fluctuates. But what doesn't change is your fundamental identity, your you-ness, which is completely beyond your personality. It's beyond your individuality. It's beyond your personality and your body and your history.
So that's what I'm seeing when I see that I haven't changed?
Yes, sure. Well, yeah, intuitive. Feel it. Yeah. Feel that. Feel this. Feel what hasn't changed. And then feel what has changed. And explore that.
And then the other thing is the feeling about myself, like my impressions about myself.
That's
personality.
Yeah, that's trivial. That's just your self-image and stuff. That's psychology and personality and all that. That's very dynamic and comes and goes, and has nothing to do with anything.
So what I'm seeing without realizing what I'm seeing is what you were talking about, not the personality.
Yeah. What you are is transpersonal. What you are is beyond. It's inclusive of, but it's basically beyond your identity as you, the person, you, the body, you, the person with the history, you, the person that went to such and such a school and had such and such siblings and such parents and all that. You are that within which that occurred, within which all this has occurred. And that is here now, just like your personality and your conscious awareness and your self-image and self-identity and psychology are here now. But all of that other stuff is a superficial dynamic expression of the fundamental unchanging. You think of it like a dreamer in the dreams. You can dream anything at night, but it doesn't change the dreamer. It's the same dreamer, whatever dream you happen to be dreaming. But the dream is an expression of the dreamer. It comes from the dreamer, so it's not like they're completely separate. They have nothing to do with each other. But one is a very superficial, transient expression of aspects of the other, which is a deeper, comprehensive, unchanging fullness.
I'm just, one word, when you said kaleidoscope, I'm right now letting all the stuck areas that I have for years push on it. I'm sitting there letting them all be kaleidoscope.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Yeah, put a load off. Yeah, good. Go for it.
Watching them open up themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. It turns out we don't need to fix anything about ourselves. We don't need to struggle with it. We don't need to repress it. We don't need to solve it. Just let it open. Be with it and let it open, and it all just goes and morphs, and it basically dissolves itself. Actuality is supremely powerful, and the mode of actuality is this kaleidoscopic unfoldment. That's what actuality does. And so when you, instead of holding things in your life and being in a stiff relationship with them, let them be in actuality, and they will start to morph and breathe and unfold, because that's what actuality does. Actuality is astoundingly powerful. Actuality, it metabolizes, because actuality is always changing, it's always moving, it's always dynamic, and nothing persists, nothing remains. Yesterday's gone, the past is gone, all history is gone, all past phenomena are just gone completely. And actuality does that effortlessly. So when you let your experience rest in actuality, it does that. It just flows, and the past dissolves and becomes irrelevant, and the present morphs into newness and vitality. It's our psychology and our habits that supply this stuckness and this rigidity, and keep things held, keep things sticking around. Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness, does that operate in the system of a belief, or is forgiveness something that you just accept what it is? So, in the sense that forgiveness, or you, because I'm looking at that and.
Well, when you accept what is, there's nothing to forgive.
Right.
Because everything is the way it is, and everyone is the way they are, and it's all okay. And if there's friction, there's friction, but there's no problem. If there's disagreement, there's disagreement, but there's no problem, because it's just you being you and me being me. And your sole job is to be you, and my sole job is to be me, so there's nothing to be forgiven. The idea that you shouldn't be you is absurd. And so if there's friction between us, it's not a problem, it's just a circumstance. It's like dogs and cats. It's okay, there's no problem, there's nothing to forgive. You don't get mad at the dog for chasing the cat. Dogs chase cats.
So you're saying there's nothing to forgive.
Nothing to forgive. And so if you're in a situation where forgiveness seems to be an issue one way or the other, then that means that's an indication that you are holding things to be a certain way in terms of interpreting them, which of course is always inaccurate to some degree. In terms of actuality, things just being what they are, it's very easy. Things don't need to work well together, but they are what they are, so it's not a problem if they don't work well together. And in that case, there's nothing to forgive, there's no problem, there's no right and wrong. you're not wrong for being you, even though it disagrees with me, say, that's just how it is, so it's good.
So, I don't know exactly how to put this. I'll just start throwing stuff out. Maybe some of it will make sense. Who knows? Human beings, apparently, there's some sort of survival factor to having things predictable.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know where the food is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can
Yeah.
go, in terms of kind of the way we grew up as
Sure.
beings, it helped to know which tree the fruit was on, where you could eat it, where it wouldn't make you sick.
Yeah.
Where the game liked to hang out, so you could spear something for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
All those kind of things, that's predictability. But at the same time, that's something that limits the ability to see what else is here.
Right. If that was your exclusive mode, that would be the case. But in intelligence and flexibility, you're not limited to one mode. You can multitask, so you can use predictability and planning and estimates and so on provisionally, but then you can adjust the circumstances in real time when you see what the actuality is like and the degree to which it diverges from your expectations, and then you can use both. It's not either or, it's a both and. I mean, that's the thing about intelligent functioning is not limited to one mode or another. It can use different modes simultaneously, even contradictory modes. You can use logic and intuition and psychic inspiration and whatever, because intelligence is capable of dealing with that kind of ambiguity and assimilating it artfully as function and so on, as function and as process and abstraction and so on. It's only when it lapses into dull formula that you get less efficient functioning, either in terms of prediction or in terms of spontaneously adjusting to actuality, or in any terms. But when you have a lot of irons in the fire, and then you sort of bet, if you're in a horse race, bet on every horse. How can you're going to win? So you multitask. You have a lot of irons in the fire, even if they're contradictory, and then you work with whichever one seems most practical and effective and productive in a given circumstance in real time. So you can just really, it's like a boxer being light on his feet. You're not waiting and committed to a single approach. I can you can come in this way or come in that way. You're not committed. You're not locked in. You can be flexible. You can be adaptive. And there's no mode that's superior to any other mode. They're all useful. They're fine. Abstraction is great. It's useful for whatever it's useful for, if you can make it useful, and so on and so forth.
Now, I know there have been times when I knew the logical thing to do, and something else said, nope, that's it.
Sure. There's logic, there's intuition, there's all sorts of modes open to us, And a wise and clever person will keep their options open and keep them all going, and then artfully try and work with whichever seems optimal on a flexible basis. It's just about quitting time, so I'm going to let that be the last word. I'm glad we started early today. Given the weather, it's a good time of day to go find someplace cool to hang out. Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to see you.
Thank you.
I'll be down here in about a month, and I think we'll see what happens. I'll do my best.
Okay.